Hello, everyone. Welcome to Norm America Show. I'm your host. What was my name again? Oh, yeah, robnoerr. It's great to be here. Um, I don't know if you can tell, but I have a bit of a cold. I was a little sick last night. We ended a little early. I'm such a sissy. Like, I I don't know. I'll be honest. I've had an easy life. My parents were wonderful. We grew up like upper lower class, lower middle class. I don't know what you would say. You know, we had some moments where we didn't know if we could pay the mortgage, but ultimately, we were okay. I have a wonderful family, wonderful wife, wonderful son. I'm just very blessed. One of the luckiest people ever. But man, am I a little bitch when I get like the littlest sick. I just, I don't know. Like I can even like I had the herniated disc, my back will be killing me. I could get along with that. I'll be like, all right, you just knuckle down and that's the way it is. You screwed up something in your back, you got to deal with it. But man, I'll get the littlest cold and I'm just a sack of garbage all day. I'm like, oh, I don't know, I don't feel like doing anything. My goodness, I'm pathetic, absolutely pathetic. Now, if I had to actually go to work and I'm not contagious, I'd do it. I could manage. But man, it's just been one of those days where I just felt tired all day and couldn't get out of bed. And I've been taking Alka-Seltzers all day. My son has this issue where he hates medicine, and the few times where he's been ill and maybe he would need some sort of medicine, um, he just won't take it. He hates it. And he was fascinated today, though, watching me. I had like a clear plastic cup that I put Alka Seltzer in because it's like a science experiment. And to be honest, Alka Seltzer is never going to taste great. But I get these citrus ones; they're not bad. I've 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 tasted worse stuff. So you know, uh, so it was good stuff. The old Alka Seltzer powering me through, but yeah. So apologies if I'm like a sack of garbage here today. I did do the extravaganza. Don't forget to check those out. The problem is, like, I run out of fucking material. Like you figure I had to have material for Law and Order, and then theoretically my show after that last night, which obviously I cut short, and the extravaganza. And so if you're trying to do like a politics show of the issues of the day, and you're doing three separate shows, if each day it feels like you're overlapping. So what was there to talk about today? It looks like Al Sayed's gonna win the primary, so we got a commie running. Yippee. Hassan. Look, say what you will about Hassan. He's picking the winning team at this point. He's campaigning and they're winning the primary. Thanks, man. I enjoyed the extravaganza today. Let's do a philosophy a philosophy stream? I'd be happy to. My philosophy is very simple. Be a Christian, try to be a good person. Once you get into the Phil Bro stuff, I'm not very good at it. I think I'm gonna start talking to some people. Here's the deal though. Here's how I feel about the Phil Bro stuff, right? Like it's only a tool to use as defense for someone like me. When it comes to these debates, because you don't want to end up like Pisco, where you think you know a little of it and then you're throwing it out there and you sound like an asshole. Oh, all words are subjective and they're just utterances and everything's just my preferences. It's like, be gone. So I thought maybe, because I was running out of shit to talk about, maybe I could review my own debate tonight. The debate I did in person here last weekend at DebateCon 8. I was against Lonerbox on whether or not Trump's a fascist. So I thought maybe we'd go over some of it. I could critique my own performance and Lonerbox's and tell you what my strategy was going in. That might be worthwhile. Or we could talk about whatever you guys like. If there's issues that you would rather me talk about, that's fine too. Now, we did shit with super chats last night. So if we do crappy with them tonight as well, then I'll have to be like, ooh, start grumbling. I'll sound like Dark Side Phil or something on here. Guys, guys, if you don't want me playing this game, just say, you know, okay? I'm fascinated by that guy. Absolutely fascinated. Yeah, don't feel bad for me. I'll be fine. AI, don't worry about it. Did I see the Perez Hilton situation? SWAT team at his house. He was harming himself with a large knife. Oh my gosh. No, that's horrible. Prayers out to him. I'm not a big fan. Perez Hilton, he was just like that tabloid guy, right? Like sort of like the TMZ-esque guy that for like celebrities, am I right? Because it's not Paris Hilton, it's Perez. It's like the gay guy. But my goodness, the Rumble people were saying that he's self-harming himself with a knife and there's SWAT team there. Terrible. Hopefully he gets the help he needs. You like that, Unforced Ego? You like the Dark Side Phil? I'm fascinated by Dark Side Phil. Someday I'm going to send him a super chat. I am. Just to keep it going, you know? But, yeah, sort of a slow news day from what I'm seeing. Is this what it was like being a political streamer like in the late 90s? Before we had like the 24-hour news cycle, it's like, oh, what are we going to talk about today? There's things I could talk about, but I covered most of them on the extravaganza. So I think that a large portion of my audience probably watches that show as well. So I'm not trying to just repeat. Of course, what's it matter anyways? I'll do a 2-hour show that I think will be pretty good, and then I'll end up staying up for another 3 hours playing stupid ass whip songs or something. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. You know the actor Jim Varney? He played Ernest. I was a big fan of the Ernest movies when I was younger. Does anybody know? Like Ernest Scared Stupid, great movie. Ernest Saves Christmas. It's good stuff, right? You know, he was like a classic, like Shakespearean actor, Jim Varney. And then everybody remembers him for this goofy Ernest character, right? That's how I feel with the stupid ass whip songs. I'm like Jim Varney. I'm actually a brilliant person. But I just have to sit out here and jump around like a clown. I will say this: there was an excellent. So over on Rumble with the extravaganza, we could say some harsher words than we could say on YouTube. I try to keep my channel here terms of service friendly for YouTube and any other platform that I'm streaming on because I don't want to lose any of my channels. Even though Rumble's been crushing it lately with the super chats, but nonetheless, you try to keep it the most strict terms of service in this case, which is basically YouTube. So I try to follow that while I'm streaming on multiple platforms. But even on Rumble with the extravaganza, where we could say some harsher words, there's certain slurs, particularly a magical word. There's this magic word. I don't know if you guys know about this magic word, but there's this magic word that if you say it, half of our world thinks that it justifies a black person just like beating the shit out of you or stabbing you. I don't know if you know about that magic word. So we try not to use that word on Rumble as well. And we were playing a clip from Full Metal Jacket, and the subtitles were slightly ahead of what was being said. And we saw the magic word appear on the subtitles, and Mr. E's like, oh! And he paused it like split second accuracy. It was an incredible save. Just really. You wish I wouldn't say the harsh words? Well, I know, but I'm a heathen. It is abracadabra. Oh, there I said it. Tom Fullery reviewed my debate. Is that what I should do? Should I just review Tom Fullery's review of my debate? That's kind of funny. We get meta. Let's see how long Tom's review is. I'm sure it's epic. Tom Fullery show. Videos. Must be under live. 8 hours? No. I think I'll pass. Let's see. Maybe he did other stuff after. No. Not doing it. I'll just review my own. In fairness, I'm not going to make it through. Yeah, you like this Crucible? Connor also reviewed it. Yeah? Wonder what he had to say. Here's the thing. I thought that it wasn't a very close debate. I really did. And I'll be honest, there are debates I'll try to acknowledge when I think it's closer. I will. Sorry, I got distracted there. Also, forgot to mention the reason I was slightly late was my computer updated, and I think I fixed the issues I was having. But anyways, I thought the debate was a pretty compelling win for me. Spoiler alert. But I do think Lonerbox is at least he's making arguments. And the way it works now is the people that are on the left are 95% going to think the guy on the left won. And the people that are on the right, my audience is going to think I won. And let's be honest, right? The audience at DebateCon was a right-wing audience. It was mostly Crucible people. So they're clearly going to think that I won. So I don't think Lonerbox did so poorly that and that happens. Like there are times, the one black lady that I debated on Modern Day Debate a little while ago here, it was so bad even the lefties are like, ugh. Like that shit happens, you know. So it wasn't that. I guess good for that, but I don't think he particularly did well. Now I was curious. I will be honest. I think in the comment section of the Modern Day Debate video, I think probably 2-1 or close thereabouts are on Lonerbox's side. That Lonerbox just crushed me. Wasn't even close. I'm the worst debater ever. And shit doesn't bother me. I know how the game goes. You know, I don't have an audience that really travels well to other channels. Not like Andrew or Destiny. And it looks like Lonerbox has somewhat of that audience. I think that a lot of it's not even Lonerbox audience, it's my haters. I think I got a lot of haters after debating Destiny. One of the things that happened there, I met this journalist, Sarah Fields. I talked about this a little. And Sarah sat at Destiny's table for dinner. And she said that most of it was just him talking shit on me, saying alls I do is use ChatGPT. And so then when you look at the comments under Modern Day Debate, there's a lot of them like, oh, Rob's just using ChatGPT. It's just people that regurgitate Destiny talking points. Of course, we've gone over this before. Destiny literally has people messaging him during debates like Pisco. When I would debate him on legal topics, he's constantly using his chat. He's constantly Google searching. He uses AI for preparation, etc. He just sour grapes because he got his ass beat. So I don't know. It doesn't bother me. Like, I wouldn't care if every comment said that I lost the debate. I know what happened. Lonerbox knows. And, you know, we'll go through some of the debate. Now, I'm usually one that, when I review debates, I'm very wordy. Maybe that's something I need to get better at. I can't help it, I guess. But, I think we should just start at the beginning and we'll see how far we get. Maybe we'll get a quarter of the way through the debate. I will address at the start some of the criticisms because I did spend about 10 minutes searching the comments. So I would like to take the comments a little bit in the criticisms of me. In no particular order, but the ones I saw the most. Number 1, I am fat and bald. Got me. Okay, I concede that point. So there's 20% of the comments that are negative of me. All right, moving on from that. Number 2, yes, I have an annoying voice. It sounds like I'm yelling and I'm high pitched. Okay. There we go. All right, that's 50% of the criticisms of me. ChatGPT. I did not use AI once in the preparation of this debate, nor did I use it during the debate. The only thing I had on my phone was 2 things I could show you. Both of them were notes. One of them was notes with some people I was working with to help me study beforehand. The other was this. That's the majority of what I was using. The other source, I won't show you because there's 2 other people in there. Most of it's just definitions. So when you see me looking at my phone, if I was reading from that, it was literally verbatim reading the definition of the scholar that I was going from. That's it. But I didn't have ChatGPT pulled up. As far as Lonerbox, I don't know. He had his phone as well. Neither of us had computers. I don't know if he was searching things on his phone, using an AI, using a search engine. I honestly don't give a shit if he was. Fair play to him. I don't care. It's irrelevant to me. So he wouldn't even have to explain himself. You know, it's like, I don't care. The device is there and you want to use it and you're being factual. What do I give a shit? So as far as that goes, no issue there. But I don't know. I do know he did not have a computer in front of him. Neither did I. So let's see. But I had like definitions of ultranationalism from the source that I was using. 1 second, let me pull up because it'll be relevant to reviewing this debate. All right. So that's one of the big complaints about AI. It's just cope. It's Destiny people. Every time I see that, I know it's just Destiny people. I don't much give a shit. So some other complaints. There were a lot of people that just bitched in general about me or Lonerbox looking at a phone. Look, when you're using, I don't see a problem with that. It's no different than if I'd written notes down on a notepad. What's the fucking difference? I think that it's clear to see that the vast majority of at least what I was saying was extemporaneous off the top of my head, and it wasn't just me reading. In a debate like this, where the topic was, is Trump a fascist? It's going to rely heavily on definitions of terms. And so for me, I like to have the exact definition I'm going to use written down. Otherwise, it becomes fluid. So I don't understand that complaint. Then another complaint I saw was, why not just use a dictionary definition? Because the whole point of my strategy, which I'll get into, was that it's an ambiguous term. I don't really give a shit about it. What I care about is why we've chosen to use that term. He's using a scholarly definition and is going to say that would be preferred over a dictionary definition. So I countered it with a different scholarly definition. That's what I chose to do. And then most of the rest of the chat's just cope. I lie about everything. I didn't give a definition. I was all over the place. I never responded to one of Lonerbox's argument. That's all bullshit. That's it. So those are the general complaints that I heard. Now, am I going to look at this and think that it was a perfect performance on my end? No, I thought I did very good. Am I going to be factually incorrect about a thing or two that I said here? Maybe. We'll see. We'll look at the debate and find out what's going on. I don't know. But that's just a preference of what's going on, or a preface of what's going on. Kyle Road the Dinosaur. What's up? $5 says, fork over the money, chat. Yes! YouTube, you better get an early lead. Rumble's been crushing it the last 2 days. They're trying to go 3 for 3 on winning donations. Thank you, Kyle, for the dono. My strategy in this debate was Lonerbox had put his notes up, and so I knew what his definition was going to be. It was going to be from this guy, Paxton. And so I announced my strategy early in my opening statement that one, I would present a counter definition, which that definition showed that Trump didn't meet the definition of fascism. And I would argue why that definition is superior. Second, I would operate within the framework of losing that argument and say, even if I lose, that my definition shouldn't be preferred. Even under Lonerbox's definition, Trump's not a fascist. But third was to argue that it's actually irrelevant anyways. The debate itself, I agreed to take it, but it's not something that I was very interested in, because to me, fascism's just a word like racism or insurrection. It's just a word that the people on the left want to label you as to justify doing horrible shit to you. And so that's what I wanted to focus on. And for me, and I tried to highlight this, any ambiguity in the term further entrenches that point. When we see within 24 hours of the assassination attempt of Trump, Lonerbox saying, at what point should we have taken out Hitler? It's clear that he's calling Trump a fascist and saying this sort of shit because he understands that it's weaponizing the anti-Trump people. Not that he particularly would pull the trigger, but that's the signal that he's sending. That's why he's using the term fascist. So that was ultimately my strategy going into the debate. And we'll see how well I implemented that. Truth Revolt, thanks for the 5, says the reason the Rumble Chat's winning the Dono War is because they're stealing their mom's boyfriend's cigarette money. Could be true. Thanks for the 5. So the other things that I wanted to do, my strategy was, I do think that there's a bit of in-person debate. This is true debating online as well, but in person especially, I think that you really want to be entertaining. You want to get the local audience into it, even if that means they're against you. You want to get them animated. For me, if I go to a debate in person, I want to be entertained. It's like going to a concert. I could just buy the CD and listen in my house, but if I go to the concert, I want it to be an atmosphere. And so I thought, personally, and if anyone was at DebateCon, you guys could tell me if you agreed or disagreed with this. I was shocked that the first debate of the second day was Destiny versus Dinesh D'Souza. I thought it was, especially for Destiny, pretty low energy. That's just my opinion. I expected Destiny to get more animated. And look, that's not always the right decision. Sometimes being calm and collected is better. But for me, it felt like, let's get some fucking, let's get some energy here, right? They debated on Trump, some topic on Trump. So that was, I even told Lonerbox, I was like, let's get the audience into it. Right? So there's part of me that's joking, but I tried to keep it within the context of the debate. Oh, everybody's going with the damn dino names now. Bastards. So, that was sort of my strategy in the debate. To be entertaining, have fun, and then the debate proper, the specific. I think that my weakness that I knew was, I think Lonerbox is more studied in the time period of like World War II time period, and in these specific countries on their specific systems of governance. And so the more I'm talking about that stuff, the more that I'm probably on the back foot. So I was really trying to be aggressive and control the framework of the debate. So we'll watch it. I probably won't have much to say during his opening, or maybe a little more on my opening. But I'll then go through what I was thinking, I guess. And so let's do it. Now, do I want to do this? Sure. Is this good or this? What do you guys think? Which one do you prefer? We'll do this. All right, here we go.
Has to do this debate.
I get. Yeah,
first thought was, I am a Scottish person being flown halfway across the world to tell a bunch of Americans, sounds like mostly right-wingers, that their president is a fascist. And that sounds good. That sounds like there's nothing, like a European coming to America to tell conservatives that their president's a fascist.
I could watch it. I could up the speed. A lot of people get pissed when I do that, though. And when I up the speed in my own debates, I talk fast anyway. So it's up to you. What do you think, audience? Do you want me to up the speed or not? Whatever you guys think. 1.1 speed. Yeah, I watch it 2 times as well. Speed it up. All right, let's do 1.25. We'll speed it up just a bit. All right.
Just in this security environment. Well,
I thought that was funny, by the way. I wanted to mention that in my opening statement. Listen to this real quick.
It might be better to hold it if you're okay with holding it.
Or you can bring your stand up.
Yeah, I'll bring this. This stand's too low, though.
It might be better to hold it if you're okay with it.
Keep all these things as well. That fine?
A little bit closer, a lot
There?
closer.
There?
There we go.
Okay. So when I was first asked to do this debate, my first thought was, I am a Scottish person being flown halfway across the world to tell a bunch of Americans, sounds like mostly right-wingers, that their president is a fascist. And that sounds good. That sounds like there's nothing, like a European coming to America to tell conservatives that their president's a fascist in this security environment.
In this security environment, yeah. What is the environment that's making the security challenging? Is it right-wingers? No, it's not, is it? Just like the Butler assassination attempt, right? Which Lonerbox then 24. So I honestly, that's one mistake I made. When I heard him say that, I wrote that down in my notes. I was like, this security environment? Yeah, because of dudes like you, because your audience. That's why. Anyways, neither here nor there, really. But
well, fascism is one of those words that is probably like one of the quickest conversation stoppers that you can get in any debate. And not many words really have that power. Pretty much ever since 1945, fascism's association with atrocities of World War II has basically made it a term that is universally inspiring revulsion. Today, fascist is all too often just used as a cheap swipe. Trump has been called a fascist by many people, including former allies and 1 or 2 current allies, but even I would concede that not everyone who calls him a fascist is doing it for the right reason.
Thank you so much for the super chat, Jason Mulgren. $5 says leftists have the softest, weaking-looking hands. Thank you for the 5. Now it's interesting. During the Q&A section of this, I don't know if we'll get there, but I suspect that this was likely the case. Lonerbox admitted that he did all of this research within the last 2 to 3 months. So in other words, in all of his tweets leading up to that, when he's calling Trump a fascist, he's basically just using the term willy-nilly, right? So when he at the opening here says a lot of people just throw this term around, that's him. He's identifying himself. He's post hoc justifying. Well, since I've used that term, I've since looked up what Paxton says, and I agree with him. So now that's what I meant by it all the times I said it. So again, he's sort of making the point that I'm going to make in his opening statement here, which is people just throw this term around when reality they're doing it because they have an agenda in labeling their opponents as fascist.
Every other academic work that you read about fascism includes the author's despair that the terms have been butchered, not least of all by Trump himself, who called Kamala Harris a fascist at least 4 times during his election campaign in 2024. But we forget that the images we mostly associate with fascism are from the end of the road. Hitler did not come to power promising World War II and the Holocaust, and Mussolini's famous doctrine of fascism didn't get outlined until 10 years after he was in power. If either of them had been fully upfront about what they wanted, they would have failed. My point is that fascism couldn't get as far as it did without appealing to a wide mass of very ordinary people. Although their electoral success is often overstated, the Nazis never won more than 37% of the vote in a fair and free election. Their growth was fast, and it captured people from all sides. It captured urban workers as well as a decent amount of bosses. It captured monarchists, disaffected liberals, religious people, atheists. It was very successful with farmers, and it did surprisingly well with women. And they did this in one of the most advanced countries on earth. And what I'm more interested in is not how fascism looked at the very end, but how it succeeded with all those people to begin with. Whether we like it or not, fascism was part of the modern world. It appealed to people who weren't all that different from us, and the more you learn about them, the more you can benefit from seeing their patterns of thought and behavior being repeated today, whether the people doing so are aware of it or not. Fascism needs to be rescued from bad usage, not abandoned because of it. And we
Now, what I'm thinking right now is they told us we had 5 minutes for opening statements. And I'm like, when is he going to get to the definition of fascism? Now, this is all well and good. What he's doing is justifying why this debate's important, okay? That's sort of what my strategy is, to say it's not the term itself that matters and our definitions. It's why are you doing this? Why do you want to use this term? So for me, that's fine, but I'm sort of like, okay, when's he going to get to the definition? BB the Aussie, $10. Thanks so much, man. Says I read body language. Watch carefully. Make up your own minds. Thank you. Obviously, I'm biased, but I have no problem if people think I didn't do well or if they have criticisms, constructive or otherwise. That's fine. For me, admitting I'm biased, I think I did very well here and won the debate pretty handedly, but let's keep going.
definitely don't need to drop it just because it's complicated. I mean, look at the word liberal. We're in the United States, where I've been watching Fox News since I was a teenager. Liberal here seems to mean everything from an establishment, moderate, reach across the aisle Democrat, all the way over to socialists and communists. In Europe, when we say liberal, we mean people who promote laissez-faire capitalism. Liberal in Europe has mostly, for the last 40 years, meant like Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. Fascism is not that complicated. So, what is fascism?
All right. Now you can see I'm like, okay, finally. Thank you. Jason Mulgren, $5 says, I notice he has zero sense of humor too. I mean, you have some banger one-liners throughout the debate. Yeah, like I said, the second part of my strategy was I wanted it to be entertaining and be funny. So I hope that came across. I didn't think I crossed the line or anything like that, but I still tried to be funny and be loose about it. Single Dads Club, thanks so much. $20 says, Robbie Tour Smug say Scott up. Dude doesn't even sound Scottish. Do you see the cultural dilution? I do, but I guess I haven't. Maybe I have a misunderstanding of what a Scottish accent is because I watched a lot of Sean Connery movies. I don't know, but I don't hear much with him. I'm not accusing him of not being Scottish, though.
I'm going to define it as more of a political behavior. And for the purpose of the debate, I'm going to say that there are three main pillars that are essential to that kind of behavior. One, authoritarian. Trump doesn't like elections. In 2012, when Obama got reelected...
Now, notice he says authoritarian here. Later, he's going to try to differentiate and say there's a difference between authoritarian action and authoritarianism. But even in his own initial definition, he says authoritarian. We'll see.
A landslide, he called for a revolution in his country. He said, quote, "We can't let this happen. We should march on Washington and stop this travesty. Our nation is totally divided." Even after, long after the race was called, he said, "Let's fight like hell and stop this great and disgusting justice." When he lost the Iowa caucus to Ted Cruz in 2016, he called it a steal and said that Cruz's results should be nullified. In 2016, he also warned that the results would be rigged, and even after he won, he denied Hillary's win in the popular vote, blaming it on illegal immigrants. In 2020, months before the election, he predicted, in all caps, millions of mail-in ballots will be printed by foreign countries and others. It will be the scandal of our times. Printed by foreign countries. The second would be populism.
Now, to be clear, fair enough, he's going to identify what is a fascist and then give it examples of how Trump meets it. As far as authoritarian, just being like, we didn't like the results of elections, that I think you could make a case for more authoritarian actions Trump has done, right? I thought maybe you could say you think some of his actions with ICE were authoritarian, or some of the, pushing for a ban on burning the flag. Those would be more examples of using government authority to crush people or silence people, not saying I don't trust the results of an election. But okay, whatever.
Most traditional dictators are not fascist. They don't see themselves at odds with some kind of hostile establishment within. They are the establishment, and they know it. What's interesting about Hitler and Mussolini is that even when they had huge amounts of control, they were always in conflict with the traditional conservative elite that helped them come into power. Even during the war, Hitler couldn't do everything he wanted, and Mussolini was even more constrained by judges, the church, businessmen, civil servants, and of course the monarchy. Both of them had to deal with the dread of experts. Hitler's administration was famously full of people who were completely unqualified for their roles. His foreign minister's only experience was selling fake champagne to the United Kingdom. His head of labor was a chemistry graduate. He had a literary enthusiast in charge of all of Vienna. Himmler's specialty was agriculture. When Trump announced his cabinet picks, I seem to remember the media very, very aggressively talking about how unqualified everyone was. Hegseth was sorry?
30 seconds.
Oh, okay, shit.
Well,
now, this is very bad time management in his part. Now, I don't give a shit. I'll give him all the time he needs, obviously. I don't think it's, wow, what a nice guy you are, Rob, or anything like that. I'm just sure. But that is poor time management. You didn't even get through. I would have started, if I was him, with the definition of fascism. That's how I would have started it. And then if you don't get to the, well, this is why it's important to talk about it, that's fine. At least you got to the prompt. You can see I was like, you loser, you only have 30 seconds left. So authoritarian, populist, and he's saying that Trump's populist because like that Austrian painter guy, he had a bunch of unqualified people in his cabinet, like trans people that were still in luggage. Oh, shit. Or Pete Buttigieg's Secretary of Transportation. Oh, shit. You see, so far, both with authoritarian and populist, that's basically some form of that is every political movement in existence in the Western world. So even doing the research before this debate, because I basically knew this is what his definition was going to be, clearly it was going to hinge on the third, which is this form of ultranationalism. He calls it something different, but anyways.
If Rob's
I'll say all this in the middle. It's okay.
we can give you an extension if Rob's open to it.
You give me an extension? You're so kind, Rob. Thank you. Where was I? Hegseth was a major infantry officer, turned Fox News host who became Secretary of Defense, Secretary of War, Linda McMahon for Secretary of Education, Rick Perry for Secretary of Energy, a department that he once promised to eliminate, RFK for Public Health. I remember wondering, do you think any of his supporters care if these people were unqualified? And I would say no. It's not just that these people are loyal. People will say that Trump chooses people like that just because he values loyalty and nothing else. No, it's deeper than that. He values what he sees as authenticity. He doesn't trust the expert class. He doesn't trust anything that he sees as the establishment. They're different from him. He himself is obviously not really like a qualified politician. That was the same thing with Hillary. Look how qualified I am. Look how unqualified Trump is. Didn't matter. And they like that. Sometimes it means he says some goofy things, like saying that Syria should take charge of security in Lebanon, which, if you know anything about either of those two countries, is kind of insane. But for that reason, old school dictators didn't really want fans. They'd rather that people just quietly accept them, or in some cases, not even talk about them. Fascists are the opposite. Their political action depends on firing up their support base, and this also means that their actions and policy moves need to be exciting. One author said that fascism is more of a set of mobilizing passions than a fully articulated philosophy. Hitler downplayed his anti-Semitism when he started gaining electoral success. In a very short space of time, he went from making anti-communism his priority to taking a radical stance against big businesses and even supporting a rail workers' strike in Berlin, and then back to murdering communists and purging his own party of the socialists of National Socialism. Trump doesn't really talk about banning Muslims anymore. He spoke about Haitians eating cats and dogs for about 2 days. Then it was Somalis. I guess he's probably a bit preoccupied with Iran right now. But I don't think anyone would disagree that Trump and his supporters see themselves as the authentic American people standing against a corrupt and out-of-touch establishment, Republicans and Democrats alike. Even when he's in power, I don't think people realize that when Trump does that, he's doing something that fascists have done all the way throughout. Even as dictators, fascists were at odds with the old conservative establishment, which remained a thorn in their side until the war. The third pillar is a revivalist nationalism.
Okay, he calls it revivalist nationalism. I call it ultranationalism. I'll get to the super chats here real quick, but none of that on its own. And this is one of the problems. Maybe I could have articulated this better. Why do I care that you call someone a fascist? If you're like, this specific thing that Trump's doing is bad, okay, we could talk about it. I might agree with you, right? But when you're like, well, he's fascist. Why? Well, part of it's that, he's distrusting of like official institutions like the pharmaceutical industry. So he put an outsider in there. And it's like, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. And by the way, the left does this as well. The Democrats do this as well. They talk about how all these institutions are systemically racist and how they're elitist. Again, almost at this point, appealing to the outsider is popular around the Western world in our political classes. So what is it? So far, authoritarian, it's like, okay, he questioned election results, so did Democrats, and authoritarian's more than just that. Pretty much every political party is going to advocate for using their authority in some way. Populist, which is just appealing to the average person and having a distrust of like systems. Yeah, that's pretty much every political party at this point. So this is the key part here. Let's see the exact term he used.
Until the war. The third pillar is a revivalist nationalism.
Revivalist nationalism.
Fascism is often described as a kind of ultranationalism, and obviously nationalism will change a lot because every nation is different, it has a different story, they have different values. But for fascism, there's one very common theme. It's an obsession with national decline, humiliation, and victimhood. For Hitler, it was Versailles and the stab in the back myth. For Mussolini, it was the mutilated victory. For Trump, it's interesting because this national humiliation happened twice. When I first heard MAGA, I thought, okay, it sounds like he's talking about the 1950s. Maybe some of his supporters think 1850s. It was vague, but it was referring to some kind of ideal. In the 2024 campaign, MAGA just meant his last presidency. You can look back at the campaign. He just started talking about how great America was 5 or 6 years ago. So it's maybe a bit less spicy than the 1930s, but when Trump talks about America as a nation that isn't being taken seriously, when he places enormous tariffs on over 100 countries while holding up a board with a bunch of numbers that came from a formula that has nothing to do with tariffs and claiming that this is America reclaiming its dignity from Mozambique, then he's kind of doing a similar thing, just in its own way. Is Trump a fascist? Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
All right, super chats real quick. Single Dads Club, $10 says, Rob, you would never understand a word a Scotsman says. It's that thick. Really? Jason Mulgren, thanks for the 10, says, I hadn't realized how often Trump talks shit about elections until Lonerbox listed them all. Shows a pattern of rhetoric that makes the cherry-picked quotes seem way less inflammatory. Yeah, possibly. Oh, shit. My mic came out. 1 second. And then BB the Aussie, $10 says, Rob, you stuck to your definition. 3 pillars were solid. Destiny's Child was not. Therefore, you held his feet to the fire. In my opinion, you won this debate. Important for right-leaning consumers. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, okay. So I'm going to give my opening statement.
Opening. Rob for his.
You know how much time I have?
7 minutes.
All right. Check. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you. What was with that low energy shit? Am I right? Oh, let's amp it up a little. It's a party. Yeah. Thank you. Now, before we get started, I have to say, I don't know if Jay Dyer's here. What's up, Modern Day Debate? Why'd Jay get more beverages than me? I think that's some shit. Yeah, I think we could unionize here, more beverages. So I thought maybe it was his hat game. So we'll go with Jay Dyer. Doesn't fit very well, so I'm gonna immediately backtrack from that. Well, I've lost already. Before we start, I just want to say thank you so much to James, Modern Day Debate, everyone that's here. You guys are the best. A special thanks to you, Lonerbox. I know that we switched to your debating, and regardless of the beating I'm about to give you, I do really appreciate it. From the bottom, I really do. It's really cool. It's not easy to switch when you've planned, so I do appreciate that. So let's get to the boring stuff first. A definition of fascism. Here's the framework for how to view this debate. I'm going to give you a definition of fascism. I'm going to prove that that definition is superior, and that under that definition, Trump is not a fascist. But if you're a delusional lefty that's here with Lonerbox or Destiny, you might say, actually, we're going to go with Lonerbox's definition. So I will prove under Lonerbox's definition why Trump is not a fascist. And then we'll talk about important things. So first, let's start with the boring stuff. My definition is going to come from Roger Griffin's 1991 book, The Nature of Fascism. And fascism is going to have 3 parts. Now, the first part is that it is populist. I will argue in both of our definitions when it comes to populism. The problem is going to be that every modern political campaign in the world is populist. Name me one campaign in any country that you could think of that is remotely effective, that doesn't speak to the importance of the people and giving the people power and distrusting wealthy people or distrusting, some sort of oligarchy or elite. So one thing I want you to remember, if everything is fascism, then nothing is fascism. And what you'll see is with these definitions, especially in the way that Lonerbox is applying them, we're going to see that it would mean that so many of these movements of the specific things they're talking about would fall into the category of fascism. Now, again, one of the criticisms I saw someone making of me was, Rob's definition's too broad. That's actually the exact opposite. My definition is so narrow that arguably the only fascist regime ever was Mussolini. And you might say, well, that's too narrow. That's debatable. It doesn't come up in this debate, but think of it this way. I say MAGA is just, I identify a bunch of things that are MAGA and say this current movement of Trump supporters is MAGA, right? And Lonerbox is like, no, pretty much anyone that, has ever distrusted official agencies is MAGA. Okay, but you wouldn't say that, Reagan was MAGA. You wouldn't say Carter was MAGA. You wouldn't say the Greens in the United Kingdom are MAGA, right? And he might say, but Rob, your definition's so narrow that the only MAGA group is the current Trump group. Yeah, that's okay. So it is debatable, rather under Roger Griffin's definition, groups like the Nazis were fascist. I tend to believe they were, but there are serious people that argue whether or not that's the case. So the point I'm making here is Lonerbox, some of the pillars are so broad that they basically fit everything. And it's, hey, what's up, Word? How you guys doing? It's interesting because this is the same sort of mistake they made with the definition of insurrection, where they broadened it so much because they were so gung-ho to use that term to attack their opponents with, that they didn't realize that the very shit they believe or support were insurrections. Same thing here. So he paints populism in a negative light, and later he's just going to be like, yeah, but not this specific kind of populism in this very nebulous way. So if anything, the person with the overly broad definition is Lonerbox. The criticism that my definition was too broad is absurd. I'm pointing out his definition is too broad and mine's much more concise.
The second thing that is a criteria for Griffin for fascism is that it has to be palingenetic. Now, palingenetic is just a fancy term that means the vision of a radical new beginning which follows a period of destruction or perceived dissolution. So picture Mussolini, right? He's a fascist. He wasn't a reformer. He wasn't saying, let's go back to what our politics were 60 years ago. He was saying he literally wanted Romans with like the SPQR tattoo driving around in like Benzes and things like that. He literally wanted the destruction of the country to go back to a time before the country. Now, does that sound like Trump? No. Trump is a reformer. Even Lonerbox said, he said, well, maybe it was going to 1950s or 1850s, and now it's just about going back to the last election. Trump's not suggesting that we go back to some puritanical time like before the founding fathers to what the country is. He's saying that Make America Great Again was a time where we had more Christian values, where we had more secure elections, where we had manufacturing in this country, where we had strong, robust, hard, and soft power around the world. That's what he's talking about, not a radical destruction. Because of that, it's clear that Trump, not being palingenetic, would not be a fascist. And remember,
means like a national rebirth, you know, and I think under that definition, Trump's clearly not that. He's a reformer. He's saying, I don't like the way things are now. I want to go back to a previous time. But he's not saying I want the destruction of the country and the rebirth from something that was here before the country. And most politicians are reformers. The Democratic Party, for example, wants to go back to a time of politics before Trump. Does that make them fascist? Lonerbox said in part of his, I forget the term he used, but basically ultranationalism, about national humiliations. Yeah, that's exactly what the Democrats say about Trump. So, yes, it's like a phoenix from the ashes. That's exactly what's going on. Okay, he doesn't meet that.
remember, in both mine and Lonerbox's definition, you'll have to meet all three criteria in order to be a fascist. So if I could prove in either of these definitions that there is a part of it that Trump doesn't meet, he's not a fascist. The third is, and it's very similar to what Lonerbox says, ultranationalism. He says that it's revivalist nationalism, but it means the same thing. His author is going to be this guy, Robert Paxton. That's where he's getting most of this stuff. Paxton talks specifically about the term ultranationalism. What he's referring to there is the idea that the country is above everything. It's above you, it's above your family, it's above your church, it's above your business. Does that sound like Donald Trump? Does Donald Trump sound like a guy that's doing things like demanding compulsory military service, demanding compulsory civic service, regulating industry, which is one of the first things that Mussolini did, because he saw as these industries are profiting themselves and not for the national good. So he starts to put this corporatist mindset where they're nationalizing these industries in order to have these regulations. Now, if I asked you, geez, ultranationalism, part of that is regulating our economy and having strict regulations on businesses. Is there one person in this room that'd say, yeah, that sounds like Trump, pro-regulation? Trump is one of the most anti-regulatory presidents in my lifetime. In fact, because of the justices he appointed and him arguing in front of the court or his team, we got rid of Chevron deference, which was allowing the executive agencies to actually create law to have these burdensome regulations on business for the national good. In fact, I will argue in both my definition and Lonerbox's definition, the modern left, particularly the more progressive left, actually meets these definitions far better than Trump does. Who would you think of as regulating industry for the national good? Who would you think of talking about populism and the fact that there's systemic racism, all the systems are racist? Who does that sound like to you? And palingenetic, who wants to return to a world that was sort of pre-race and give the land back to Native Americans and things of that? Who denigrates our foundational documents more than the modern left? But if you don't believe that and you want to go with Lonerbox's definition, there's a lot of similarities. Basically, the big difference is that instead of palingenetic, Lonerbox says that, well, authoritarianism. Okay, authoritarianism. Water, very good, right? That's not part of the debate, I just need a drink. Anyways, authoritarianism. What's more, what is the threshold for that? All governments are authoritarian. Was it authoritarian when I was told that I couldn't go to my place of business, but big box stores could stay open because of COVID? When we couldn't go to church, was that authoritarian? Was it authoritarian when Republican and Democrat administrations alike pushed the Patriot Act and took away our Fourth Amendment rights? Was it authoritarian when the Biden administration actually pressured social media groups to censor people? Was that authoritarian? Is it authoritarian when they tell us that we can't have bump stocks or assault weapons? All of these things could fit a definition of authoritarian, and much like the word fascist, what you'll see is authoritarianism is this catch-all phrase that's used predominantly by the left to denigrate people on the right for things they don't like. But boy, oh boy, do they love authority when they get to exercise it.
30 seconds.
Populist, we talked about. Ultranationalism, we talked about. The last thing is this debate is boring. Let me be straight up. And both Lonerbox and I are bullshitting you, right? The truth is, Lonerbox used this term before he did all this research, and I used terms like this before I did this research. Ask yourself this. If you think at the end of the day that the term fascism is ambiguous, ask yourself this. Why is he using this term? Why do people like him use the term? And you want to know why? Let me read you a little post here from our friend Lonerbox. This is from July 14th, 2024. Without the benefit of hindsight, at what point in the Weimar Republic would it have been morally acceptable to assassinate Hitler? That's 24 hours after Trump was shot at Butler. These people use these terms because they want to justify people like Tyler Robinson that killed Charlie Kirk writing on a bullet, catch this bullet, fascism. That's what I'm here to argue, that shit needs to stop because they're using this term because it's loaded to weaponize people to use violence against people like us.
So that's obviously, to this day, I'll tell you straight up, I don't really give a shit about this topic. It's another fucking whatever. Definition of insurrection, definition of fascism. My argument in these has always been the way that it's used. I don't personally give a shit if you have a definition of insurrection or fascism that you want to apply to things. The way our systems and our institutions enforce the way those words are used is the problem I have. And so when I'm talking specifically about why, if it's ambiguous, if you're like, I don't know, I guess there's a lot of definitions that we could use for fascism. Why is it that they're choosing this specific word? Well, I think that you could get some insight in the idea that within 24 hours of Trump being shot at, Lonerbox is tweeting out, at what point should we have taken out Hitler? For me, that's illuminating in why he would choose this word. So that's my strategy. Now, I'm well aware that people will say, but that's not the specific debate, which is why I'm also arguing within the framework of the debate that I don't feel Trump is a fascist. But truth be told, I don't give a shit. I really don't care. It's just like if you call me a racist now. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit that you think I'm racist. If you have a specific problem with a specific thing I'm advocating for, fine, let's talk about it. But the word racism has been overused to the point where I just don't give a shit anymore. That's it. That's how I feel about the word fascism. So, some super chats here. Safari, $5 says, I really cannot stand Euros yapping about American politics. Y'all talk about corporatism because leftists love to use my feelings. Yeah. I mean, in fairness, I talk about British politics, but I get it. Stogus, thanks for the 5, says a fan of Noor debate style. 1, kindness and gratitude to the opponent. Yeah, which Lonerbox was pissed about afterwards, that people were too nice to him. 2, destroy and insult opponent. 3, thank the opponent and compliment them. Yeah, that's the style, yeah. Truth Revolt, thanks. $5 says, watching you, I'm like, damn, Rob's spitting faster than Destiny's cooking. But then I remembered it's on 1.25. I can talk faster in Destiny if I want. And I don't even use supplements. All right, let's get on to the debate. Oh, look, I even had some people standing. Wow.
All right, I've got the timer set for you, gentlemen. The floor is all yours for open dialogue.
So let's do the boring stuff first.
Hey, can I respond to that first?
What's that?
Can I respond to that first, or did you want to?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. One thing about authoritarianism, my definition of I'm not using it as a stand-in for palingenetic. I'm just saying authoritarian means that it's in contrast to liberalism, which basically offers again, we can talk about government overreach all day. Yes, I accept every state does this. Authoritarianism is contrasted with liberalism, which offers people this basic right for citizens and contending political parties to influence the composition of government through elections. Authoritarians don't like that. Anti-authoritarians do. Do you have a problem with that definition?
Well, yes, because what I would say, the devil's in the details there. So, for example, in this representative democracy we have here, if I vote for someone under the auspices that they will operate within the framework of our Constitution, and then they violate that, so they violate the First Amendment, is that authoritarianism, even though they were duly elected?
I wouldn't say that makes them an authoritarian. You could call it on a spectrum of authoritarian measures, sure, anti-democratic measures, but there's a fundamental difference between someone's worldview when they say that they are accepting that they exist in a country where people get to choose the makeup of government through elections and people who don't.
Okay, so then what would be the criteria we put that? You would acknowledge that it's just the rhetoric of Trump that would meet that and not the actual action. We had elections, Biden won, etc. So it's the rhetoric that's the problem?
No, it's the fact that he tried to change the results when he lost.
Do you think that he had any success in changing the results?
What do you mean? Was that what I asked? I said he didn't. He tried to
No,
change
I
the results
asked
when he
you.
lost. Yeah.
I didn't ask
He
what you asked.
tried.
I asked the
Yeah,
question.
so he tried to change the results when he
Okay.
lost.
Right. So he
You don't
tried.
get let off the hook for failing, right?
He tried, but he lost, right? Do you think there's something to be said about the actual effects that went into action? So
No,
if I
it's
try and I
actually
lose,
badly.
if I try and I fail, and then another person tries and they have some sort of success, which one would be worse?
Well, going back, Hitler failed in the beer hall putsch, and he still ran in elections. Was he not being like authoritarian when he did that, or?
Well, I'm not, we're talking about this on the sliding scale because you're using sort of this unique definition of authoritarian, right? We could argue back and forth about it. What we would all agree is that there's certain thresholds of authoritarianism that wouldn't rise to the level of fascist, correct?
Would you be satisfied if I changed it to like anti-democracy, or?
I mean, would I? That's your definition.
That's why I'm asking, because I just want to see if we can actually find
If it's,
a definition that we agree on. and
instead of going through this, I'll get to the punchline. Like Trump and him trying to have a proposed legal challenge because he thought that there were shenanigans that went on in 2020, which he was right? Him having a proposed stalling strategy to have alternate electors, which would have caused stalling, which would have then led the courts to look at this stuff, isn't trying to overthrow the country. However, the Obama administration, working at the behest of Hillary Clinton, actually taking disinformation sourced by Russians in order to spy on Trump's campaign and presidency, sourced by Russians, paid for by Hillary Clinton, under the auspices of Trump was colluding with Russians, when the FBI and the Obama administration knew that it was Hillary's team that was colluding with Russians. How is that not accepting the results of democracy?
I'm just going to go back to the first thing that you said. Trump did not just offer a legal challenge, and he did not just say we want to stall for Eastman said 10 days, I think. Trump was saying to certify the proper slates, i.e. the fake ones for 7 states that he had produced.
And what would have been the result?
I don't know what the result would have been.
It would have went
It's
to
never
the
been in
court.
that situation.
It would have went to the court.
How do
We
you
have
know
been in
that?
that situation.
Has that ever happened before? Has a vice president ever just
1960
taken? No,
Yes.
in Hawaii,
Yes.
2 alternative slates. Were they both certified by the state or not?
No, only the Republican slate was. And yet the Democrats put forth a slate because they said we want to stall because there'll be a recount. For those of you who don't know, here's what happens. There's certain time frames that you have to meet, right? So it's like you have to have your electors in by a certain time frame. So I think it was 1960 Hawaii, what's going on is they knew there was going to be a recount. So the Republicans were the official slate of electors that the governor signed. They send that slate, which is what we're told you're supposed to do. The Democrats were worried that the recount would go their way, but there wouldn't be any recourse because these slates wouldn't be there. There would only be one slate there. So they proposed an alternate slate, which eventually was accepted. But at the time of the sending of the slate of electors, we saw that actually there was a Democrat slate that was sent that was not signed by the governor.
Do you think that's the same? First of all, I'm not actually.
So again, right? Notice how I'm sort of playing into his game a little here. He's very effective here at the beginning of. I bring up the fact that, like, look, if we're going to say not accepting the results of the election, Democrats didn't do it either. They were actually effective in not accepting the results. Trump had a proposed legal strategy that wasn't effective, and to say, well, that means that he cheated or that he's a fascist, this was authoritarian, I think is nonsensical. But so far, he's thus avoided talking about my criticism of the Democratic Party and kept it focused on Trump, which is actually good of him. And obviously, I took the bait. It's fine, right? And I'm explaining, actually, we have had a situation like this occur in the past. Now, it's different. There are nuanced differences to it. But yes, there was 2 slates of electors. One was not certified by the governor, and it went forth, and no one called them fascist. It was a delaying metric.
I'm sure that's true. We can the legitimacy of the slates because, again, these didn't come from a party. They came from Trump and his own guys. Trump also produced a slate for a state that he didn't even claim to have won the popular vote in, which was New Mexico.
Trump's, once more, what was going on? I'm not sure of the specifics of New Mexico. What I'll say is this. What was going on was that he wanted these legal challenges sought. Some of the legal challenges actually ended up being successful, at least temporarily. For example, in Pennsylvania, the Superior Court of Pennsylvania ruled that mail-in ballots were illegal. Now, the Supreme Court, which I believe is a 5-2 Democrat court, actually overturned that later. But the whole point was, once the game's over, it's over. So Trump's trying to be like, we have this election that is massively changed, where we have millions more voting than we ever had, millions using this system that we never had. The Western, by the way, what's mail-in voting like in Scotland?
I don't know. I don't engage in it.
How about the rest of Europe?
I don't know.
They don't really like it. I wonder why. Because everybody...
And I will admit, I've since looked this up, that I do believe I'm incorrect. I think mail-in ballot actually is used in Europe. So fair play to calling out when I'm incorrect about something. What they do is they have ID. And that's where my mistake. They're very serious about voter ID. It's only in the United States that they don't use it as much. And so mail-in voting, there have been studies worldwide that show that it's less secure, more likely to have accidents, so you have rejected ballots, or more likely to have fraud. So the idea of having mail-in ballots without IDs, like we had so many places here in the States, it should have been what I said. So I get mixed up there about the mail-in voting and them accepting it and the voter identification. So
knows it's less secure.
Wait,
So
we try to challenge election results based on them? Since when we've done that?
what I'm saying is that it's perfectly
This
reasonable.
country's been doing it since the Civil War, no?
What's that?
This country, America's been doing it since the Civil War.
Not
no?
like this. Like so,
This with more people.
having absentee ballots or having like certain ballots because you're in the military, you have an illness is different. Like in my state of Pennsylvania, I think the amount of mail-in ballots that increased were something like 20 to 30% of all of our ballots were mail-in, and there's significant problems. But I'm not getting into another.
Just to be clear, though,
January
Rob,
6th debate
these,
again.
well, these weren't the same, but these weren't the same complaints that Trump was having at the time. Well, first of all, before the election, he said that these alternate votes were going to be cast by different countries. We know that's not true, right? He's not even saying that anymore. That other countries were just making ballots and sending them to the United States to get them
Well, we just had the revelation in 2020 that we saw China was hacking voting systems.
Well, what was
and stuff.
China
It was
doing?
covered up by
China making ballots and then trying to get them cast in the United
there
States?
are allegations of that.
No,
making
they
the
weren't
case.
doing
We're
that.
likely,
That's
we're
not-
likely
that's
to
not-
learn more. We're likely to learn more about
Oh,
it.
we're likely
I
to
know
learn
that
more.
you
What
and
do
the
you mean we're likely
lefties
to
don't
learn
want
more? We're likely to learn more.
The story's just breaking. We were told over and over certain things like illegals aren't on the registry. Oh, they are. Well, illegals don't vote. Oh, we are. We just learned that this week. Then we had the story break about China. Actually, China was doing everything that we accused Russia of doing in 2016. And instead of our FBI deciding, oh, we're going to just blow up this massive scandal to help Hillary Clinton, this time they covered it up. Now, if it's so important to secure our elections from foreign sources, why did the FBI hide that information
The
for
story,
years?
again, I feel like I need to correct like three things at once. The first thing that happened with China that we do know about, we'll get the facts in the future. Hopefully this thing that Trump just pulled out of his ass 6 months before the 2020 election just turns out to be true now when we
So to be clear, there have been allegations. I don't know that it's been proven, but there was allegations, I believe, that China was trying to get like driver's license or things like that. The idea of them trying to print ballots, I don't think that happened. But there are allegations that they were intending to try to get voter data and then possibly get people access to be able to vote that they would be able to control, right? I don't know. I've looked into it somewhat, but I am not willing to say that this definitively happened. Nonetheless, the point is, this is sort of a red herring. We're just going back to January 6th, as if Democrats accept when they lose elections, which we'll get to here later.
don't have any facts. In China, there was one actor apparently who downloaded publicly available voter information for 6 states. We don't know why they did that. US Intel doesn't know why they did that. That's the problem. That's what happened with China. Someone in China downloaded publicly available voter information for 6 states. Not they tried to cast alternative ballots or fake ballots or fraudulent ballots, send them to the United States and get them cast as votes. When Trump said that in 2020 before the election, it's made up.
Again.
Yes or no?
What? Yes. Did you get that from someone? Again, Trump specifically saying things. Oftentimes he's prone to hyperbole. My man Dinesh called him a fabulous. I thought that was a good word, right? Like he's prone to hyperbole. I don't know specifically
people believe
everything.
it. You said it's true. We just don't have the
Let me
facts.
finish. Probably we'll look into it, and he didn't say exactly what you're quoting. It's irrelevant to this point. What I'm saying is Trump thought that there were problems with the election, as did millions of other people. He wanted to delay and tack it to see it. The other side did everything they could to rush it along because they weren't afraid that it was a lie. They were afraid it was the truth. But it's interesting. You said something there that I want to address. I noticed that you didn't talk about anything about what the Democrats and the Obama administration did not accepting the results of the 2016 election. In fact, a YouGov poll in 2018, that was 2 years after that election, said that nearly 2/3 of Democrats believed that Russians manipulated votes in order to swing the election for Trump. This is because of the rhetoric of Hillary Clinton, who was still saying in 2018 that the election was stolen from her by Russians. And now we see that the Obama administration was actually taking the information given by Hillary, sourced by Russians to get illegal FISA warrants. My question to you is, even if you want to scream January 6th is authoritarianism, how does that not prove the modern Democratic Party is as well?
First of all, that's a very compelling claim about the Democrats and Hillary Clinton, who conceded the results of the election, within 24 hours. And even that was enough for even people on her side to make fun of her for it, because she took a few hours longer than most people do because she was upset. And I made fun of her for that, as someone who supported her. So we're going to compare this to Trump.
Scotland, what are you supporting her for? Don't you have kilts or something?
Listen, there are pops here, quiet. Listen, that's a really compelling claim about the Democrats. The topic of the debate is whether or not Trump is a fascist. If you want to lay down a whole premise for why you think actually the Democrats are the real fascists, which would be really fascinating, we can do that another time. When it comes to Trump, again...
No, it's actually not a bad line there from Lonerbox, right? No, I'm just here to talk. And this falls in the category of what you see all the time with that's whataboutism. Now, here's the issue. We end up taking debates that are skewed towards what the left wants. Is Trump a fascist? And when I say the way you're defining the terms here, in this case, authoritarian and being part of fascism, correct me if I'm wrong in the audience. If I said someone was an authoritarian, and you were like, well, give me examples. And I said something like, well, they were locking people up that disagreed with them, or they took away people's rights to free speech. Wouldn't you say, yeah, that's authoritarian? Lonerbox is like, no, that's not what I mean by authoritarian. I mean questioning election results. You don't even have to successfully challenge them, just questioning. Questioning election results and trying to have a plan That's the only thing that I'm qualifying as authoritarian, right? Okay, fine, fair enough. My problem is, but you didn't call it authoritarian when it was your side doing it. So you have this unique definition of the term, and yet when we see the parties that you support doing that very thing, you're like, but that doesn't count. That doesn't count. And so what they could do is they're like, I define fascism as any political party that ever grumbles about something. Therefore, your party's grumbled, you're fascist. And I'm like, well, that's absurd. All parties would be fascist. That's not the topic. That's why you should prefer my definition and interpretation of what the word means over Lonerbox's. Because his would mean that even the groups that he supports would be authoritarian in this case.
You said this thing earlier, which again, I guess we both agree with the populism, but populism is not just saying that we want to appeal to loads of people, or I think like we're standing for the little man. Populism, and it's something again that I think Trump and Mussolini and Hitler and other fascists seem to all hold in conjunction, is this idea of like the amount of unbelievable charity that they give to their leaders. Like it's the fact that we've got Trump, who Dinesh D'Souza earlier, he said something like, when you're talking about the 40 million immigrants arriving under Biden, he said something like, well, that's a lie, but it triggers the right emotion in people, therefore I like it. I'm not paraphrasing that, am I? He said that. Like the lie was okay.
Let me ask you this.
Because it just worked on you is why I'm saying.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to clearly go back to the Russia thing real quick and just say, notice how he ran from it. The reason this is important is if everything's fascism, nothing's fascism. So at the end of the day, you might be saying, technically he's right. If the Democrats are fascist, that doesn't prove that Trump's not. But go back to that point that I made at the beginning. At the end of the day, probably the average person amongst you is like me. And you're going to be like, yeah, there's a lot of words that we could use definitions for fascism. So why are we using this one particularly? And what's happening is he's willing to overlook Democrat fascism because he wants to use this term to label conservatives. That way they could justify not Lonerbox, who's a chill guy, right? But he knows he's part of a community in DGG that their moderator's calling school shooter vibes. He knows that that's what's going on. He knows 24 hours after a Trump assassination attempt that he's out there saying, what point should we have taken Hitler out? So when he starts his opening statement here and goes, well, it's about preventing it. I'm not concerned about the end results. I'm concerned about the beginning. And who cares if you want to call Democrats fascists whatsoever? Here was the results of Democrats refusing to accept the results of an election just because she said, I concede. Then it's okay to all of a sudden weaponize the FBI to hamper, unlike anything that Trump did or Trump's team did going into the 2020 Biden term. So the point is that he's justifying the selective use of this term. That's what he's running from on the Russia thing. That's why he doesn't want to talk about it, because he wants you to think that Trump's this unique book. Only Trump's a populist. To answer this question of populism, who's your author? Are you getting most of this from Robert Paxton? Mm-hmm. What does he say the minimum is in order to be a fascist?
Does he say there's a minimum?
He rejects a minimum specifically. In other words, would Paxton say that a government could be all of the three things you outlined and still not be fascist?
Well, just to be clear, Paxton does think Trump is a fascist.
It doesn't matter if he thinks or not. The question was, if he rejects a minimum, is it possible to do all the three things that you've outlined?
Well, he rejects a minimum, but so am I.
Yes or no?
Well, he rejects a minimum, but so am I. I'm not saying that you can meet one of these pillars and still be a fascist.
Can you answer that you could meet all three and not be fascist?
You could meet all three. I don't know who would meet all three and not be a fascist. No.
But if there's no minimum, that means you could be a populist. You could be a
but that's not what he means by no. Is that what he means by no minimum?
Yes, he means that there is literally, he specifically
rejects. Well, how do you know that?
This.
Because the three pillars thing, I was doing that for the purpose of the debate. I'm summarizing what I've read from Paxton. He doesn't say there are three pillars and there's no minimum.
You're getting yes or no. The scholar that you're using predominantly is Paxton.
I'm deriving it, yes.
Yes,
but I've adapted it a bit for the debate because Paxton.
So you're taking a scholar.
Paxton's definition is a book. It's a 200-page book. So I'm not going to.
Yes, but don't you think that there's a problem when people, like, look, I debated in college. This is what assholes like us do, right? We come up and we read, oh, this guy wrote this, I got to debate. I look into this book, I find something, and then you shoehorn it into your own shit. And that's what he's doing. He's taking this scholar that specifically says there is no minimum, right? Now, what that means, just in case you're listening, is you theoretically could be ultranationalist and a populist, and you could be authoritarian, but you're still not a fascist. So how do we know then if there's no minimum that his scholar outlines? Converse that to my definition that gives a specific minimum. It must be palingenetic, it must be populist, and it must be ultranationalist. So what he wants you to believe is that we should just accept on his work. My feeling is, even though James, our moderator who's running things on time, sounds very fascist to me, right? Even if he meets all three of those things, well, maybe he's not a fascist, but Trump is. And ask yourself constantly, why is he doing this? Why is he so hell-set on calling Trump a fascist? So I want you to explain to me why we should accept this definition where there is literally no minimum given. What's the threshold before when you personally choose to call someone a fascist?
Okay, so when it comes to Paxton, when he lays out, again, because he lays it out throughout a book, okay, maybe he can disagree with the way that I've interpreted it. I think it's fairly clear. When he lays it out that there is the populism, there's the anti-establishment variable, which is what's happening in most other dictatorships. There is the national revivalism, which actually I think is pretty much the same as palingenetic. I just didn't want to use that term because it sounds pretentious. But and then there's the fact that they don't believe in the idea that people should be able to choose the makeup of government through elections, which is how Paxton defined authoritarian at the beginning of his book. So
Trump's done that.
Who crosses all three of those things in Paxton's book who he doesn't think is a fascist? There's no one.
There could be plenty of people.
But
How
who
about
are
this?
they?
Let's ask you this question. You or Paxton either. Name me a government after like World War II era that you consider fascist, other than the Trump administration.
Can you just move the mic a little bit closer so it's angled? There you go.
God, I
A little
want to
closer.
stare at him, so you know.
You got it.
A government that he talks about, he probably would. He gets a very fencing position on the Ayatollah, the first one in Iran. But yeah, he wrote that in 2004, which is when he did point out that quite a lot of parties in Europe were moving towards power. He mentions Le Pen specifically, but not governments. No,
Yeah.
that's why Paxton, when he was coming back again, just because fascism died and didn't come back into power for a long time, most fascisms in the 30s and 20s failed. Didn't
I
they?
would say there's plenty of political parties that would meet this definition, and yet Paxton or you never.
Which
flagged-
ones though? Which ones are? Well, palingenetic,
Name
nationalist,
me
populist, and
Well,
authoritarian.
palingenetics, my definition, not yours. Like, so what,
Again, I was just using the exact like, but the
fair enough. Let's go through it. Populist.
palingenetic
Can you,
nationalism and
do you think I
authoritarian.
could name? Do you think I could name a government or a political party in a major country that was populist in the past 50 years?
Well, given that that's only one pillar, I don't know.
Okay, so you accept that. There was plenty that were populists. Right. Now, next, number two. Your next is authoritarian. Can we name any governments that was both populist and authoritarian in the past 50 years? Should be pretty simple, right?
And authoritarian?
Correct.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, but I was locked down during COVID. Democrats.
How is that saying that you don't believe that people should be allowed to choose government by
I
participating
think
in
that,
elections?
I don't think that that's what the term authoritarian means. I think authoritarian could mean taking power, using your institution to take power from the people in ways that's illegitimate, right? So, for example, if we have a Bill of Rights and our government is elected and says, we trust in elections, we believe in elections, but no one's allowed to speak anymore. You no longer have free speech. Is that
Okay, so
authoritarian?
again, when I'm proposing a definite, and again, we probably both agree that neither Paxton nor Griffin would say that these are the prerequisites to be a fascist.
No, I think Griffin
They
would
probably would
absolutely
agree.
say he
What?
outlines
COVID
it
measures.
specifically.
COVID measures would qualify as
Oh,
fascist.
no,
to
no, no,
Griffin.
no, 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 no. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the three that we're outlining.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying when I'm saying authoritarian, you might.
How does
you might
Paxton
have a
define
different-
authoritarian then?
authoritarian or authoritarianism?
Either.
So when he says authoritarian, I think it's on like it's within the first like 30 pages. He says something about how
Remember, by the way, he said in his opening statement that it was authoritarian, not authoritarianism. Now, what he's going to choose, try to differentiate the two terms here now.
I think I actually quoted it directly, didn't I? He said something about how it's the difference between contrasted with a liberal regime that believes that the public should be allowed to choose the makeup of government through elections.
You don't think Trump thought that the people should be allowed to choose the makeup of government through elections?
Well, only when he wins, because when
Okay,
he
same
loses,
with
he says there's
Democrat.
fraud, and he tells Mike Pence to make him president.
No, did he?
Yes, he did. Yes,
he didn't.
Mike Pence tested that. Yes.
No, he didn't. See
what
the
did I
guy-
say? What did I
get
say?
him, audience, get him.
Yes, I know. Whoever the fuck, Mike
Hey,
Pence.
that's a valued ticket buyer. Don't be talking shit. You know?
I'm aware that Mike Pence, Giga Chad, didn't do what Trump told him to. I'm saying what Trump told him to do.
What I'm
Pence
saying
says that
is,
Trump
we've
told him
already
to make
gone
him
through.
president.
We have a dispute as to what Trump wasn't saying. No, I lost, so just make me king. Trump was saying, I believe there was cheating. By the way,
So
were you
make me
aware of the
king?
fact that two questions on this real quick, since we're going down this rabbit hole. Do you know what the Transition Integrity Project is?
No.
Okay, this was a project that was led by John Podesta and other Democratic strategists that war-gamed out the 2020 election. They said if Biden lost, you know what the Democrat strategy would be? You ready for this? Alternate electors. They also suggested that they would have states like California threaten to secede from the Union. Remember when all the like super cool Democrat celebrities, like the Avengers cast, was saying, now you could do it, electors. You could choose to actually vote in a different direction. How wasn't that them being fascist then?
That's a great theory again, Robin. I'm sure it's very, very correct factually all the way through. The fact is that this is a debate about whether or not Trump is a fascist. We can
Right,
do a Democrat debate on fascism another time if you want. The question is whether or not Trump is, and now it seems to be that we're stuck on the idea that Trump doesn't accept election results when he loses.
I'm saying that in the modern United States landscape, no one accepts elections results when they lose as a totality of the parties. The Democrats said they were cheating. In fact, they were already priming the pump for the 2020 election. Remember, oh, Trump's taking away mail ballots. He's taking away mailboxes. It's a big conspiracy. He's going to control USPS. He's not going to allow. Both sides were doing this shit. It started with the Democrats in 2016 that even though they said we accept the results of the election, for the first time in history, weaponized our FISA courts to utilize the entire FBI to spy on the Trump administration. That story, by the way, hampered his entire administration for 4 years. Now, what was hampered with Biden when Trump peacefully left power? Oh, nothing. He had a mandate to censor people that criticized the 2020 election, authoritarian. He had a mandate to aggressively go after everyone on January 6th and treat them like persona non grata. And then he proceeded to try to censor people that were talking about COVID.
Has anyone ever told you that less is more, Rob? I'm sorry, it's just that, like, way earlier, I'm sorry, just like, way earlier on, you're using every sentence. What was that sentence that just triggered that entire soliloquy? It was because I said something about, it's because I said something about how,
We're talking about authoritarianism,
It's
right?
because,
And you're talking about
it's because I said that Trump doesn't accept the results when
Correct.
he loses. Oh, well, everyone, people make excuses. People say, oh, yeah, if the Russian disinformation hadn't happened, then maybe more people would have voted for me. But I still conceded the results. Trump still does not confess that he has lost the 2020 election, did he?
why
He's
does
never
him
said
say,
he lost.
why would him saying I concede make any difference?
That you acknowledge the process, that you acknowledge the fact that you lost an election, that you're taking part in a
He
democracy?
acknowledged it by leaving.
Oh, he acknowledged it by leaving. Okay.
Yes.
And what's he doing now? He's still saying he won. He's
So
still...
what?
Okay.
What if we find, by the way, just curious, hypothetically. What if we actually ended up finding results that like at least one state did have cheating and it went the wrong direction?
Like,
Is it still
If
fascist?
there was outcome determinative results.
What if it was just outcome
In
determinant for one state?
Well, a couple of things. One, I would maybe ask like if Trump actually knew any of that before, like
Doesn't
he
he
found out this much
suspect it?
later.
That's a no.
But the fact is, no. I'll just give it all to you. Let's just say that Trump actually does uncover the fact that he should have won. Like, it was outcome determinative. Of course, that would change my opinion on whether or not he respects the results of elections.
So then the second question that stems from this is if he truly believed that,
But all I'm hearing is, we'll get the truth tomorrow.
if he truly believed that, would it be fascist?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. Like when Hitler said that he truly believed that the Jews were the reason that Nazi Germany went to war, does that really change whether or not it was a racist opinion? Like, no.
That's not the question. We're not
If you're
talking about a
delusional,
racist opinion.
you can still be anti-democracy even though you think you are. It depends how you act. I judge people based on what they do,
What
not
does
what they say about
democracy
themselves.
mean?
In this context, we're
Yes.
talking about the right to participate for the people to choose the composition of government through elections.
So if
People and parties.
so let's say, here's another hypothetical. Let's forget about Trump for a second, or let's say Trump did this. Instead of doing what he did, he faked a bunch of ballots and he put them in and then he won. Would that be anti-democracy?
Yeah, of course.
Would you saying, hey, that's fucked up, we shouldn't swear Trump in, he faked a bunch of ballots, would that make you a fascist?
If it was outcome determined, well, again, we're talking about one pillar. I don't know why you keep doing this. It would have
Okay,
to be
would
more
that
than
make
one
you-
pillar. To
would
both
that-
of us, it has to be more than just one
Fair
variable.
enough. So the question is, when this is the key thing that we're saying, because we're admitting populism's like whatever, and when it comes to the idea of authoritarianism on this specific, would that make you authoritarianism?
What if Trump faked a bunch of ballots and I said you should be president because
right,
you faked
you
ballots?
said we should know, we should look into that. I think he cheated. Are you fascist or is he authoritarian?
If Trump faked ballots and what, like outcome determinative, or if he just committed
Yeah,
a crime?
you think it's outcome determinative, sure.
Okay, if it's outcome determinative and he did it, and I think he shouldn't be president, then yeah, I don't think you should be able to get to be president because you faked ballots. Yeah.
Okay, so what if you said that and you were like, no, I don't think you should be president. We need to look into this. And then it turned out you were wrong. Were you fascist when you made those statements?
And it turns out I was wrong.
Correct.
Well, then you could say I was delusional, yeah. But then that
But
would
you would
probably-
be authoritarian
Well,
when
no,
you
if I
said
was
it.
if I was delusional, yeah, that would mean that I didn't really respect the process.
So you were authoritarian.
You could say so, yeah.
I think that's absurd. So then it determines, so right now we're in a state of Schrodinger's fascism.
be clear,
where if it
by the
turns
way.
out, like it's nonsense.
Well, by your hypothetical, it seems to mean that like anyone who's ever
And the reason this matters is, as you'll see later, it's not actions, it's rhetoric and intent that's going to be whether or not something is fascist, right? I don't think it's because he's saying authoritarian would be not respecting the process. Trump legitimately thinks the election was stolen. So he had a strategy, which I didn't agree with, but he had a strategy to delay until these issues were looked into. That was the strategy. Now, if he's wrong, that doesn't mean that he was fascist, that he was like, I don't respect the process. He was like, I respect the process and thinks that it was fraudulent. And so he wants it investigated. That's different than him just saying, I've lost, but I don't give a shit. I'm not giving up power. And one argument that I should have made that I didn't hear, okay, when the Democrats intentionally covered up Joe Biden's cognitive decline, and then it blew up in their face, and they installed Kamala Harris without one Democratic vote, was that fascist? Was that authoritarian? Couple super chats real quick. Jason Mulgren, $10 says a federal judge granted the DOJ's request to dismiss the 9 remaining January 6 cases against the Oath Keepers members today, vacating convictions including seditious conspiracy. Excellent. I didn't know that. That's great news. Truth Revolt, $5. Thank you. Says nobody accepts the results of the election, paging Stacey Abrams. Of course. And we'll get to the Democrats didn't accept the results of the 2016 election. Saying I accept the results and then getting illegal FISA warrants to weaponize the FBI for 4 years, that's not accepting the results. And Pix Paradox, $10 says Schrodinger's fascism was peak. Thank you.
like commit any kind of crime or anything, like what changes the fact about whether or not they they're aware that they're
A
doing
legal
it?
system is different. A legal question with a law is different than the question of if someone embraces some sort of ideology. If I truly think that I'm fighting for democracy, like for example, let's say I'm really for Citizens United. I think that's a democratic thing. And then I talk to you and you're like, Rob, my man, you delusional fat bastard. Citizens United, that's a mess. That's anti-democratic. That doesn't mean I was a fascist when I was pushing because I thought it was a more democratic thing. It doesn't make it
Yeah,
fascist at all.
so you apply this standard just like all across the board then, right? Because that means like the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is sitting there in his head and he genuinely believes that actually, no, the people don't want elections. They love me. They would fucking hate it if we had elections. He's no longer authoritarian?
Well, the question would be that specific.
okay, that's
No,
fine.
let me. Because that, by definition, is saying, if the question is authoritarian is not allowing democratic voices, and you say, I don't think the voices want a voice, so I won't give them a voice, that seems to be a little different. What I'm talking about specifically is saying, I think that I'm adequately representing the democratic process because I think people's votes were misread or were cheated, etc. And so we want to take time to look into that. The other side said, no, we don't. Do you think it's, if corruption can be anti-democratic and authoritarian, do you think the fact that Democrats are fighting so hard to avoid voter rolls to be turned over means that they're authoritarian?
I'm pretty sure that if you just happen to spend 6 years accidentally, all the accidents happen in the same direction. That's interesting.
Correct.
You just happen to accidentally be stumbling into only ever accepting election results when you win. Then yeah, you probably just don't really have that much care for the democratic system.
Again, your opinion of that, I'm telling you, Democrats did the same thing. This is what it is, right? It's like this thing, you see this with leftists all the time, right? They're really pissed off about the way you talk. They'll get pissed because Trump says something that they actually do. Oh my gosh, Trump said lock her up. So we went after him with every lawfare we could. But it's okay when we did it, but Trump suggesting it and then not doing it's bad. Same thing here. So what he's saying is like, well, you know, Trump pissed and moaned and said, oh, this sucks, but nothing happened and they
He didn't just piss and moan.
Meanwhile, let me finish real quick. Meanwhile, Democrats weaponize the FBI. The gold standard for political scandals in this country is Watergate. Two bumbling fools going through a hotel of an opponent. This dude is supporting the Democrats weaponizing the entirety of the FBI, illegally getting FISA warrants, the most powerful intel agent in the world, to hamper Trump's administration. And we're like, but as long as they said the magic words, I concede, well, then it's okay. Then it's not anti-democratic. It's absurd. The results matter. And what I'm saying is, the reason this matters is because you're picking, have you ever used a different definition of the term fascism?
Probably.
Do you think if I was to call you right now a cultural Marxist, that would be fascist?
Would it make you a fascist to call me a cultural Marxist?
Would it be fascist rhetoric for me to call you that?
Maybe lean a little bit, but...
What about that rhetoric? Can you explain what that is that would make it fascist?
It depends, because for one, cultural Marxism is referring to a real thing with regards to the Frankfurt School, but then on the other side, it often overlaps with the neo-Nazi conspiracy theory about cultural Bolshevism. So I probably have a few more questions about what you mean by cultural Marxism before I made any determination.
We got November 16th, 2019, Lonerbox tweets out, you literally joined a party that
Why are you talking about me from 2019? Like, go on. I was retarded in
Wasn't my question. So you're consistent. Yeah, it's, your tweet was, you joined a party that bolsters fascist conspiracy theories. In the first paragraph, it's free speech policy. This is from UKIP, and you highlight specifically the term cultural Marxism in their platform as a fascist conspiracy theory. You no longer believe that?
That's what people do. They, you know, what, 7 years ago, 6 years ago? Yeah, they look into the facts and they change their mind on things, unlike Trump on the 2020 election. But yeah.
So just to be clear, you were mistaken when you called UKIP fascist in 2019.
Yeah, of course I was, yeah.
Is Reform fascist now?
Probably not, because they don't have I've not seen any evidence that they plan to disrespect the results of an election that they lose.
You respond to someone on 11/26/25 saying, I shit on Reform all the time. I just think likening them to Nazis is retarded. Lol.
Yeah.
Maybe in the last 10 years it didn't happen. You know how often you call someone a fascist Nazi has zero correlation on how politically useful. That's interesting. So Nigel Farage runs UKIP in 2019, fascist conspiracy theorists. In 2025, when you're arguing with Hassan bros who actually are Marxists, you're like, oh my gosh, how can you call Nigel Farage's party fascist? Now, do you see what I mean about the selective usage? Right? The same party, same guy was fascist in 2019 and in 2025 not.
Rob,
it's just because you used to be retarded. That's your claim.
Well, that's a shorthand way of saying I used to know less and now I know more. What's wrong with that?
When did you...
Why are you just used 2 tweets from me from 6 years apart, and you're trying to make some kind of like psychological profiling about like selective usage? Like, what are we doing here?
The point
People can learn their lessons. And
the point is the
on.
term is incredibly ambiguous, and you yourself have used it in ambiguous ways, which gets to the real point of this debate. Who gives a shit? Is Trump a racist? Is he an insurrectionist? Is he a fascist? These are all loaded terms that there is ambiguous meanings to that people like you use to justify violence. Can you explain why you tweeted out within 24 hours after the Butler assassination attempt? At what point should we have taken out Hitler? What were you trying to say?
We already had this conversation. I don't know why.
You want to talk about it? I'm happy to. You want to talk about what
well, I think the topic of the debate was whether or not Trump's a fascist.
Right. And the point is that the topic itself, which I'm beating you on, that he's not
the same conversation where I also did say that America is still a democracy and assassinating politicians is probably not the wise way to go.
Mike, so here's what happened. Like, imagine this happened. Where's Destiny? Is he here? This motherfucker's spiraling out of control after the assassination attempt, right? So me, little me, gullible me, is like, man, I'd like to talk to some lefties that, like, I don't know, don't want to kill me and the people I vote for. Wouldn't that be nice in this space? And so the guy that I always look to as the most reasonable, sensible person in that orbit is this man, who is a actually very nice guy, and you can see he's like, doesn't seem like a maniac or anything. So to see him 24 hours after an assassination attempt be like, well, what point should we take out Hitler? I desperately wanted to use my little platform to try to get people on record saying, whoa, can we pull back the lens? Lonerbox agreed to talk to me. You remember what your explanation of me was, why you put that post?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I said it was a joke.
No,
And
you
also,
said it was totally disconnected from the assassination attempt. You weren't even thinking about it. It
I don't
just so
think I said it
happened
was
within...
totally disconnected. It obviously was to do with the assassination attempt. But then I think you probably recall, or maybe you don't, is that I spent that entire stream talking about the fact that if a country is still a democracy, they're actually, even with Hitler, if you were actually in the time and you didn't know everything that was going to come, it wasn't actually that clear of when would be a good time to assassinate him. I never said that he should have been assassinated during election periods or when there was still a democracy, did I?
No, but
I actually said that if you were going to kill Hitler, it would probably be to the point when it's gotten too late. But that would
You know
probably be
the
after the
message.
Enabling Act when he's
Now,
already
does
completely
anyone
seized power.
Now you could listen to the bullshit explanation, and you might.
Did
even
I
be
say that? Did I not say that, or do you just not remember?
I don't remember the specific
Have I-
things you said,
so- so-
but it's
yeah, so
on
you do
that.
remember,
I
like,
remember
yeah, you
many
looked at the
specific
tweets,
things
yeah.
you said. I can't recall if you said verbatim what you just said. I know that you hemmed and hawed, but I want you to be honest. What do you think the average reading of your post would have been to a person?
Well, by a MAGA person, they probably think I'm trying to incite violence against
Okay,
them.
what about a lefty that hates Trump?
A lefty that hates Trump?
They'd probably
yeah,
said,
maybe.
"Oh,
But then I
Lonerbox
would
is
probably
smart,
hope they
dude."
wouldn't watch my stream.
And he's like, someone tried to kill Trump. Maybe. What point should we have taken out Hitler? Now the fact that you want to hem and haw because you realize you look like an asshole, right? And be like, "Oh no, that's not what I meant. What I actually was saying." You know what that post was. It was disheartening. It really was. And I think that it's damn right shameful that so many of you on the left continue to spread this bullshit and ignore the fact of the overwhelming violence that we see. Do you think it's a coincidence that one of the bullets that was going to be used to kill Charlie Kirk said, "Catch this fascist"?
Yeah, that's why I think the word fascist also just kind of needs repairing on all sides. I even call out leftists when they overuse the term as well.
So the only thing that
Again, sorry, you've gone on these like enormous fucking. I just
Because I'm
remembered on the very beginning. I think maybe just after your opening statement, I wrote a note here about palingenetic nationalism and Mussolini, but we never even got there. So I was going to say that your definition of palingenetic nationalism, when you say Mussolini was talking about like basically destroying the nation to go back to, again, this is probably why you'd rather take an approach that looks into what people actually do rather than what they say. Mussolini's opinions and his actions changed with the wind. You were talking about corporatism and state seizure. Mussolini wasn't doing that for his entire.
So you notice I'm trying to be, most of the time when I review debates, I talk way more because this is my debate. I don't feel bad just letting it play out for you all to see. But you notice he just runs from that. He's like, "Oh, I do criticize people, huh?" And just sort of runs from it. A couple super chats, or just one. Our unbelievable legend, Unforced Ego. Thank you so much, my man. $100 says bodied. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. So he knows he can't defend that. So he's like, "Well, I had this note from earlier in the debate." Now, it's actually not a bad strategy by him at this point because he needs to get away from this. He doesn't have an explanation. And again, for me, I think that I'm going to win, that there's still more work to be done to win why Trump's not a fascist under his definition or my definition, right? But the fact that you could already see serious flaws in it, he's like, "Well, by authoritarian, I just mean questions elections." And I'm like, well, the other side questions elections as well. And we spent a lot of time on this. You can see that there's some ambiguity in what the term means. And so why is he specifically using that term? And I think that his tweet's illuminating right after the assassination attempt. Crisco, $2 says, "Won't someone rid me of this turbulent debater?" Oh my goodness. So let's keep going.
Period. One of the first things that he did when he was appointed by the king was to privatize a lot of industries and to open up free markets. He did that for a good 2 years. And then even corporatism, which I know there's a lot of these like very, very niche underground fascists who just focus on corporatism as if that's like the most important thing about them. Corporatism in practice was basically governed and dictated by big business. It didn't really make much of a difference to the way big business functioned until it was getting to the point when he wanted to invade Ethiopia. I don't know, maybe that could be a more interesting conversation. We can maybe talk about people who everyone agrees are fascist and see where we disagree on them and then see maybe where the overlaps are.
I just want the audience to know the reason that people use this term on the left, and that's the most important thing.
You're not talking to the left, you're talking to me.
People tired of the fucking left going, "Insurrection, fascist, this is our definition"? Fuck this shit, right? You want to know why they're using these terms. That's what's going on. But I'm happy. I'm not running from the debate. I'm just saying we could go through all this specifically. How about this? One thing that we could agree on, if we could say that this is the quintessential fascist country, what would you say is the quintessential example?
The quintessential fascist country from probably Hitler and Mussolini.
Mussolini. Can we go with
Italy
that?
and
Because there's some scholars that Hitler,
There are no scholars who think Hitler was a fascist.
that claim that he wasn't.
There are, overwhelming majority would say that Hitler
Well, I
was.
think you're right about the majority, but everyone would agree Mussolini, right?
So Paxton and Griffin both say Hitler was a fascist.
We both agree. By the way, Griffin says Trump's not a fascist. Okay.
Paxton does, yeah.
So here we go. Let's go through your notes. Why don't you put your notes up online?
Nothing to hide.
What's that?
Nothing to hide.
Well, thank you. Here's your notes on Mussolini, right? Let's start. Here's his initial programs. Now, each of these we're going to say, does this sound...
So he just said, let's talk about countries we could all agree are fascist and go through their actions. That's what he said, right? Okay. We all agree Mussolini. That's the prototypical fascist country. So let's compare your notes on Mussolini. These are Lonerbox's notes on Mussolini. And we'll see if his actions line up with Trump. Okay?
More like Trump or his opponents. Number one, expansionist aims around the Balkans and Mediterranean. Sound like Trump?
Do I think Trump wants to expand
Like, this isn't a gotcha, but he hesitates to answer here.
into the Balkans or the Mediterranean? No.
General expansionism. I'm not being an ass.
Yeah, you can just list it off. I know you're going to just list it off and all.
Well, I would like to go one by. I would say.
You want to go one by one?
I would say yes. That sounds Trumpian.
Yeah, you can just say that. Yeah.
Right? That sounds like Trump. Sure. I'm not going to lie. I'm not a bullshitter. All right. Number two. You ready for the second thing Mussolini did? Women's suffrage. Now, does Trump? Every person I've met that's like repeal the 19th. By the way, show of hands. Who repealed the 19th here? Now, leave your hand up if you're a Trump supporter. Wow. That's weird. That doesn't sound very Trumpian. Women voting.
Do you think most Trump voters don't want women to vote?
I think that of the people that don't want women to vote, overwhelmingly it's Trump supporters.
Well, if you look at my
I don't
notes,
think
again, if you look at my notes, you probably also, it's not even far off from where you're reading, I think. It's somewhere in your notes where it's a very common trend of fascists where they do actually where they change their opinions and where they also will very frequently just betray their purists. Mussolini did that more than anyone.
So, again, what he's saying here is, oh, well, they'll do the opposite of what they would do if they were fascists as well. They'll do X and then they'll do the opposite of X. And so there you go. Show me Trump ever changing his mind on something like universal suffrage. So it's a nice sleight of hand that he tries to play here. But
right. So it's if Trump wants women to vote fascist, if he doesn't want women to vote fascist.
Well,
right,
neither of these play into whether or not he's a fascist.
The question is, we're looking specifically at the quintessential prototypical fascists and the actions they took to see if they match up with Trump. I think that all of us would agree here, yourself included. Don't you think that the Democrat message is Trump? He's trying to restrict the vote. If we're talking about the populist metric that we're looking at with Mussolini here, the theme that you're getting across here is that he wanted to expand the vote to everyone because part of populism is representing the people and saying they need to have a voice, et cetera, et cetera. Trump said to be restricting the vote. So how can you square that circle if this is what true populism looks like? The Democrats are the party that want to remove restrictions on voting.
Again, neither of our definitions talk about restrictions on voting as being one of the pillars of fascism.
The problem is our definitions use terms like palingenetic and ultranationalist and authoritarianism. So we're like, what are examples of things that would be that? And you're like, oh, well, Mussolini did all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, so let's look at what Mussolini did to make him authoritarian. So we look, it's like, he allowed women to vote. And I'm like, oh, okay, that would be an example of authoritarian. And he'll just run and say, no, he could have done that or not done that, but he is an authoritarian. Well, what's your proof he's an authoritarian? Well, the things he did. But we just went through the things we did and see that that's not like Trump. Yeah, but you could either do X or the opposite of X, and that makes you you see the circular logic here?
Well, the question is more about what they wanted. We know, again, if you look at my notes, Mussolini compromised.
So now it's about intent. It's about what they want. But we just talked about earlier, if Trump really thinks the election was stolen, then he wouldn't be a fascist. He's like, no, the intent doesn't matter. So on one hand, he's like, it's just about the intent. And when I say, well, okay, but we can't see Trump's intent, he may think the election was stolen. He's like, no, it's about the actions that he tried to take. Okay, but if it's about the actions, we can see that his actions don't line up with Mussolini. In fact, they're opposite in a lot of them. So he's trying to have it both ways. He's the one that said, what might be a more interesting conversation is go to groups that we agree were fascist and see what their actions were and how they line up. That's what we're doing. So far, we're on number 2, which was women's suffrage. This is his notes. This isn't me interpreting what Mussolini did. It's his notes. Number 1 thing, expansionist aims. Granted, I think you could lump Trump in with that more than his opponents. Number 2, women's suffrage. That's clearly, universal suffrage is more of a Democrat push than it is a Trumpian push. Trump's trying to restrict to people that are citizens, to have voter ID, etc. That's one of the big complaints against Trump. And right out of the gate, he's like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it lines up. We'll keep going, though.
A lot with the current establishment that he was in because he just wasn't as popular as someone like Hitler was.
I think that it is reasonable.
He had to be appointed by the king. He had to respect the fact that the traditions around him as well and the society around him. Again, we both know, and I don't even know why I pretend to disagree with this. Mussolini, when he got his way, didn't have to prove himself in front of an electorate.
Okay, but when he got his way, was he doing things like next? 8-hour workday and worker participation in the technical management of industry. Does Trump sound like a guy that's like, we need to limit the workday to 8 hours? Or does he sound like a guy's like, fuck it, business, work them to death. We don't give a shit. Which one? Now, this is once Mussolini's in power, so he doesn't have to worry about the electorate. Was he doing things like pushing the 8-hour workday?
It matters which phase of power he's in as well.
Okay, let's say phase, what do you want to go with, 7?
Well, I was asking you, because I'm asking you because it's your claim. Like, which period?
It's your notes. When you wrote that, what period were you talking about?
So when we're talking about Mussolini and his his expansion of the 8 hour or his economic policy, Mussolini's economic policy changed all the way throughout his rule. Again, there's somewhere in those notes as well. There's somewhere in those notes as well. As far as what fascists say and what they do and what they stick to, economics is probably like the main sphere where they change all the fucking time. Like, because again, economics and the ideal economic structure of society is not really something that fascists seem to give that much of a shit about. It seems to be that they'll do what works. They're pragmatic. That's why economic policy is not really like a part of a key definition of fascism that you would get from Paxton or Griffin.
But the economic policy would go with the idea of ultranationalism, which you need to win. And ultranationalists mean it's the nation above all. So they wouldn't look at private business and say, well, we don't really care about you. They'd say, no, you as an individual or you as a private businessman have to work for the good of the state. That's why they put these massive regulations. It's not just that you're like, well, my definition doesn't talk about economics. Yeah, it does when it's talking about ultranationalism. That's what it's referencing. Last thing, I promise.
Well, to be fair, Paxton does not say that you need to have a particular economic policy to be a fascist.
I'm talking about ultranationalism, which he does say you need. Last thing.
But he doesn't, again, do you think he contradicted himself? I'm sorry?
Do I think that Paxton contradicts himself? No, I think that Paxton's outlining his version of what, we'll get to what he means by ultranationalism, and I'm saying things like economic policy.
Disagree.
Do you think that Paxton would say that Mussolini's economic policies were leaning into ultranationalism?
I don't know what you mean by leaning into ultranationalism.
Were they ultranationalistic policies?
It depends on which ones. His economic policies changed constantly.
The massive regulation of industry.
The regulation of industry when he was preparing for war?
Sure, and even outside the scope of it before that.
It's not, so when he was massively regulating industry, especially when it came to war, because he was nationalizing, this is when he kind of moved a little bit away from the corporatist side, that was when he was planning to invade Ethiopia. So
just to be clear, when you said...
The policy itself is not inherently the ultranationalist part. The ultranationalist part is why he's doing it. He was doing it so that he could invade another country and expand his territory.
No. That's not...
It's the expansionism. Like no. There's a reason no one thinks about economic policy when they think about fascism.
That's outrageous.
There's the same thing with the definitions
That's
as well.
outrageous, right? Because now what you're trying to do is shoehorn in, no, ultranationalism is only a subset of the real problem, which is expansionism. Can you be an ultranationalist without expansionism?
You completely misunderstood what I said.
Can you be an ultranationalist without expansionism?
It's possible, but you probably need to...
When you write, quote, from your notes, Birth of Fascism in 1919, coined the term fascismo, applied to the movement, fascistae, man, I'm a redneck, cambiationamento, yeah? Roughly meaning fraternities of combat. And then you put immediately after that, so you're like, in 1919, here's how it started. Then you put initial programs called for. Initial, not after he was in power and then decided to move up the war machine. So last one, here's what you write. Partial expropriation of all kinds of wealth through progressive tax, seizure of church properties, and confiscation of 85% of war profits. Trump ever suggested progressive tax? Which party does that?
I don't know how long you spend in this debate looking at different economic policies and saying, oh, well, it doesn't look like Trump would have done that, so how could he possibly be a fascist? I've never said, and neither does Paxton say, that there's a particular economic policy that you need to have to be a fascist. That's just
when I'm saying, you're right.
That's just a lie.
In fact, you're right. If you want to appeal to Paxton, Paxton also says, even if you meet all of the criteria that Paxton talks about, that still doesn't necessarily make you a fascist.
I don't know where he says that.
You admitted,
I don't know where he says that.
You admitted, you're like, well, I'm just kind of applying and using it in my own way, Paxton. Now he goes back to Paxton when all of a sudden the authority matters.
Not applying it and using it. I'm not saying I'm using it, I'm not changing the essence of what he said.
Look, this is what people want to do that use this whole like words are fluid and we could do whatever. They'll be like, oh, I have this author, I have this definition. Why wouldn't we go to the people that were fascists and say, well, what was the shit they were doing? If that's the shit we don't like and we're like, that guy's a fascist, we'd say, okay, what did he do? And when half of the things that your own words say that he did were more in line with the Democratic Party than Trump, I think it's reasonable to say like, geez, it seems like you're only selectively applying this shit.
Well, when we look at selectively applying, you're just using Mussolini, but Mussolini did a lot of those things that Hitler didn't do. So you're saying Hitler wasn't a fascist?
I'm saying that it's a clear case with Mussolini. And if we see
it's a clear case with Hitler as well. I don't know why you keep saying there's some ambiguity. There's not ambiguity with Paxton. There's not ambiguity with Griffin. Is your definition?
Well, because
where's the ambiguity that Hitler was a fascist?
Well, because the idea of palingenetic, right? What was the palingenetic impulse of Hitler?
No, what you're doing is you're doing this thing that I've seen other people do this as well, is where they insist that fascism basically, because Mussolini was the one who used that term and coined it and called himself a fascist, Hitler called himself a national socialist, and therefore we just have to look at Mussolini's program. We have to look at the doctrine of fascism, which he had ghostwritten for him in 1932, which again is quite vague given the circumstances. But again, there is a reason, and people and fascist parties who exist today, there are some in America who try to do this, where they say we're just adhering to the true fascism, which is Mussolini's doctrine from 1932, and they actually don't like Trump for that reason. But they don't. There's a reason you guys don't. There's a reason you guys don't know who the fuck those people are, and Mussolini would have laughed in their faces as well. They don't understand how fascism worked. Mussolini used to very frequently say that he himself was the definition of fascism, and his followers understood that. They understood that fascism, when it came to policy or when it came to what kind of direction they wanted to go into, it always had to involve raising some kind of like popular mass energy. And Mussolini adapted all the way throughout, and as did other fascists like Hitler, they adapted as well. That's why Hitler when he was running, he ping-ponged back and forth constantly between his attitudes on big business. Most people, again, Marxists are like idiots for this as well, because they'll say that fascists are just like the vanguard of capitalists. But capitalists, some of them liked Hitler, a lot of them, most of them tolerated him, but he was at odds with them as well. And this is why you like go into any economic policy to say whether or not this is the true fascism doesn't make any sense. In Mussolini's Doctrine of Fascism, he says in the first paragraph, fascism exists as a movement responding to and in space and time. So obviously, economic policies, or like which tax policy makes the most sense in a particular area, is not going to define what would be a fascist 100 years later. It's like saying, this like I can be a liberal today because I think that like there should be universal suffrage, but only for men. No, ideologies adapt and they change over time. We're talking about what's the essential
How
qualities.
convenient. And so once more, we could see the X or the opposite of X, depending on if we want to call someone a fascist, would apply, because we could read their intent and know that their words, et cetera, et cetera. So they're always a fascist no matter what they do. And the proof is they're a fascist because of the things they do. When you say, well, you're just saying that Mussolini, it's only the things that meet, and just because Trump doesn't do all that. What I'm telling you is there are things that Mussolini did that were in part of the important parts of his ultranationalism that are literally antithetical to Trumpism. Literally, progressive tax rate, women's suffrage, taking church property. These things are the opposite. These are things you'd be more akin to see his opponents doing. So it's not just a matter of, it's A, B, C, and D, and well, Trump did A, B, and D. It's Trump did A, but the opposite of B, and the opposite of C. And he's like, yeah, but that's okay because it's for the time and place, right? How do you define ultranationalism, which is important in here?
It's not A, B, and C. So you gave it away yourself. You said part of his ultranationalism, which means obviously there are some ultranationalists in different situations and in different times of history and with different nations with different histories and values that would do slightly different
So define
things.
it.
Ultranational, again, I put like national rebirth, but I guess it's kind of similar to the.
So Trump wants a national rebirth?
When people talk about the idea that the nation is constantly undermined, humiliated, under attack from enemies both within and without, and there needs to be some kind of strong man who's going to come in and take that nation and give it the rebirth either from within and from against the rest of the world. That's usually where and that's like a very front and center of their ideology. That particular kind of nationalism is what
you said particularly, like maybe I'm putting a word in your mouth. See if you agree with this. It's like they'll use the idea that we've been like embarrassed on the national stage, right? Like things like that.
It's more of like an obsessive callback to national humiliation and national decline.
All right.
So, well, first of all, just to be clear, just maybe we can agree on people who everyone agrees were fascists. For Hitler, he didn't win an election on anti-Semitism. He won an election on Versailles and anti-communism. So the communists, that was part of his nationalism. They were part of nationalism for most fascists, is that they thought that the nation was under threat from these foreign subversives like the Russian-backed communists, and also that the Treaty of Versailles and the international community was embarrassing us and taking a piece out of us, and we're going to fight back. Mussolini, it was with the mutilated victory. They thought they didn't get what they
so let me ask you a question. Let's pretend that all these fine people go and get like some beer or something. It's me and you smoking a cigarette. I'm an asthmatic, so I'd be like, and I say, hey man, are you kind of embarrassed for Trump on the world stage? He's kind of humiliating the country, isn't he? What do you think?
What would I say that's true about Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascist. You want to return to a time before Trump, right? And you think there's calls to how he's humiliating us, both inside the country and outside.
Yeah.
That sounds very fascist, man.
Again,
I don't know.
This is probably the fifth time where you've taken one pillar. But,
how does that not mean? Are you populist?
You've taken. No, I'm not populist.
Okay,
no.
so you don't believe in like the idea that we need to like massively support the electorate and the individual voices? The parties you vote for.
That's not populism. That's just believing in democracy.
Define populism.
Populism is a fundamental idea that there is the people, which is the authentic expression of whatever population that they're in, and there is the establishment, the impure, the corrupt, the people who are.
What party do you vote for in Scotland?
Labour.
They populist?
No.
They don't believe that there are the people and then there are corrupt vanguards?
Not when they talk about the authentic expression of the people and that there's a corrupt establishment that they're fighting. No, Labour doesn't talk like that. No, they don't talk like that, do they?
Yes, they absolutely do.
The corrupt establishment is
they talk
the
all the time about money influencing politics and big money and all of these interests. And they talk about people like Nigel Farage or Rupert Lowe and how they're putting all of these special interests in that's subverting the will of the people. Yes, that's how they talk.
I know that it's not, I'm trying to be polite when it's like a European talking to Americans. Americans don't know fucking anything about Europe. Like, no, Labour does not talk like that. Labour spends the entire time trying to convince everyone that they're pro-business because they specifically want to fight that idea that they're like.
No, wait, there's that idea. Where did that idea come from?
I don't know. What have Labour done when it comes to, have they gone after the ultra-rich? Have they done like tax rises on, have they raised income tax or corporation tax or anything like that? They haven't.
It depends. Populism basically comes from the idea.
They were going to do a tax on big farms and they walked it back.
I think my author's better than yours. Griffin says in the same book that populism's a term for forces, even if they're led by a small cadre or vanguards, in practice or in principle, and not merely for show, depend on people power as the basis of their legitimacy. Now, do you think that the modern left, whether it be the Democrats in the United States or Greens or Labour Party, if we see in the United Kingdom, do you think that they talk about power to the people and the people having power? The fact that you want to argue that's like, nah, that's not the case. They're not talking about the will of the people, blah, blah, blah.
Well, just to stop you, I do believe the Greens and like Bernie Sanders, I do believe they're populist, but they're definitely, but they're not authoritarian and they're not ultranationalists. Would you
They're
say that?
pop-
Would you say they are? But we're doing it's the sixth time now that you're taking one pillar and saying, "Oh, that sounds like fascist." No,
No,
it's
what-
3 pillars.
Again, what we're talking about specifically is you've already demonstrated based on your rhetoric that you're ultranationalist because you said you're humiliated by Trump and want to go back to a time before Trump. That's ultranationalist.
I don't think that.
Now
that's
the
like
next question is,
front and
are you
center of my
populist?
ideology.
And you're like, no. I also have this unique definition of populist that's like some bullshit. You know, the truth is,
Wait, what do you
we
mean
can
some
see
bullshit. You said populism is just when people think that I think the people should be represented.
I read.
You just
I
described
just
populism.
read a direct quote from the author that I get my definition of fascism from.
He said that populism is what? Just believing that
A
the
term
masses
for
should have
political
power?
forces which, even if led by elite cadres or self-appointed vanguards, in practice or in principle, and not merely for show, depend on people power as the basis of their legitimacy. So it says that they're depending on the will of the people, and that we're here for your voice against the elites, etc. And that's where they get their legitimacy. This is why, for example, it jives with my definition, why Mussolini's like expanding the vote, right? Because his whole point is like, we want as many people. I'm here for you, all of your people. It's your voice that matters. More people should be able to vote, etc. Now, this is what every modern political movement does. They talk about needing to be the voice of the people and the power coming from the people because there's these elites. The left, he says the elites are like big money or they're, the Jews or, stuff like that, right? So both parties do this. Both sides do this. Again, populism is just a term. It's the same with authoritarianism. You've already acknowledged that your rhetoric's ultra-nationalist because you're talking about... Now, do you see this
I have not said
stupidity?
my rhetoric is ultra-nationalist.
Why? Didn't you say that Trump's a national humility? Don't you want to reform to a time before Trump?
Because saying that is not the same as having it as like an obsessive first, like a frontal piece of your advocacy. Do you think me saying that like, oh yeah, Trump kind of makes America look kind of stupid when he tells Syria to go and take charge of security in Lebanon? Yeah, that's kind of retarded. That's the same as like Hitler talking about the stab in the back or Mussolini talking about the mutilated victory or Trump the way he talks about MAGA. It's literally in the slogan, "Make America Great Again." We don't know exactly which time he's talking about. We have to guess.
I think that your rhetoric is clearly would fall in line with fascist rhetoric by your definition, and the party.
Well, even if you're pushing that, you're saying it would be ultra-nationalist rather than fascist. But
listen, I think that it would be ultra-nationalist. I think that though you would totally support the party in this country that puts that as their front and forward message. What are the Democrats running on in 2028? Orange man bad. Oh, he's humiliated. What'd your boy Destiny just say in the Dinesh? He led off with this. The rest of the world, our allies are ashamed and oh my goodness. So yes, it is a central pillar of the modern Democratic Party to say Trump is horrible. He's humiliated us in the country now, and we need to go back to a time before Trump. That's ultranationalist by your definition.
Again,
I don't think so. I don't think that qualifies.
This is the seventh time again when you're talking about Democrat. You said that's ultranationalist just for Democrats to say again. Trump. They're saying what like Trump. Has failed the country, but then you realize that when Democrats do that, they would also say Trump is disrespecting the institutions. He doesn't respect elections, and then they would start to go into things that are not populist, and they're not authoritarian.
Right. What Trump does is he says, here's reasons that we think that the country's been going the wrong direction. We don't think our allies have been paying their fair share. We think the elites in this country don't represent the will of the workers or the manufacturer. Same shit. It's just you're like, when our side does it, it's okay. They mean well, so it's okay. Ultranationalism, by the way, Paxton gets the idea from Moreau. Here's Moreau, what he says about it. He says, he propagated that nationalism is a substitute religion, culminating in a mystical cult of the earth and the dead that made absolute demands of the individual. Integral nationalism cast off all ethical ballast, obligating and totally subordinating the individual to one value alone, the nation. My country, right or wrong, you are nothing. Your people are everything. You are the kinds of moral commands to which integral nationalism binds to the faithful. In other words, it would be saying you are nothing. Your business is nothing. Your church is nothing. Your family is nothing. You are just a member of the state. Things that we would likely see if Trump did that would be demanding compulsory military service. Is that what Trump's done? Not even close. In fact, if anything, you could say, if we're talking about lip service, because if you can't just go with rhetoric and you have to go with the actual policies, Trump's such an evil fascist authoritarian, he can't even get the SAVE Act passed because his own damn party won't support legislation that 90% of us support. So it has to be like, well, it's the way he talks. Okay, well, Trump talks about religion. Trump talks about family. Trump has never once suggested that you have to have some sort of compulsory service to the country. So this idea, again, this is where Paxton's getting the idea. Your author is getting the idea of ultranationalism. It is a religion. Can you show me any examples of Trump doing these sorts of things, like demanding compulsory service or saying that the nation comes before your God or comes before your family? Can you show me one time?
Again, this is going back to why, when I was using Paxton's definition, I said national rebirth. That's why I was talking about a form of political behavior, because this is actually from where he goes into the chapter on definitions. He said it's a form of political behavior entailing, obsession with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and then alongside to be remedied by cults of unity, energy, and purity. So I don't know why you... I don't know why
He's getting this idea of sort of ultranationalism, or what they talk here is about integral nationalism. It's the same sort of concept. And in fact, Paxton calls Moreau like basically the first fascist, correct?
Yes.
Right. That's the idea. That's what ultranationalism is. That's what his author says, the original fascist. This is what he said.
But my author
the
also
form of
says,
nationalism that would require being a fascist.
Just to remind you, my author also says that you don't go to just like what the first person said to say that's what this thing is.
But it's clearly the quintessential.
He also says, again, maybe you should have just read the whole book, I guess. But like, yeah, when he goes to near the end, when he's talking about the definition of especially with nationalisms, yeah, like the way that different people express nationalism are, yeah, of course they're different because nations are different. They have different histories. They have different values. That's why when these neo-fascist movements run around wearing swastikas in America, they're actually not doing what the fascists were not trying to be exotic with their language. They were trying to speak to the emotions and to the history of the people in their country.
Again, so, pretty much every modern political movement does this. The give back the land.
I don't think anyone does it to the point that one of their supporters, like Dinesh, is literally saying that, like, oh yeah, sometimes he lies, but it triggers the right emotion that I like it. And that actually is a theme that comes up constantly throughout Paxton's book, because that's what Hitler and Mussolini did as well. It was about triggering the emotion, regardless of whether or not what you were saying was true or not. And then that's why Trump has convinced you when it came to that thing with China that there was some truth in him saying that different countries were going to make their own ballots and send them to the United States to cast them. Your response was, well, maybe we'll find out that that's true later.
Find out that's true.
Well,
but
that's it working on you, Rob. That's a lie from 6.5 years ago, just fooling you.
No, here's what happens.
The evidence they had was that someone downloaded
voter
information that was public.
So let's go through this for a second, right? He said, all they did, it was like one guy did this. These were the same people that were running around with their hair on fucking fire because Russians spent $500,000 on Facebook and Pokemon Go ads. Holy shit. And we had to stop the whole country. We need the largest investigation in history from the FBI to go after the Trump team. I know some of you out there were like, I'm just trying to catch a Gyarados or a Pikachu, No, victim of Russian propaganda. That's what was going on. Holy cow, it was the worst. And now our FBI was all in, the media every day. Then this story, what happens is they focus on one little detail, right? Oh, Trump said ballots, but there weren't ballots. And what they ignore is our FBI had intel that China was doing exactly what this country had to stop for in 2016, interfering in our election systems. And our intel agencies were covering it up because they thought that it helped Trump. Now, does that sound like democracy? Does that sound like giving the people? And he doesn't care. Lonerbox doesn't give a shit at all. He's like, whatever, the ballot stuff, that's bullshit. That's all the bad. Any word on our intel agencies intentionally covering up foreign interference into our life? You got any word to say about the democratic nature of that? You going to condemn that?
Well, the fact that you're wrong. The U.S. intel report from 2021. Not only they reiterated that Russia had authorized the campaign to support Trump's re-election, obviously, they also mentioned that China was taking what they called low-level exploratory steps to denigrate Trump. And then they also said that Iran was launching a campaign to undercut him. That all happened in a Biden-era U.S. intelligence report from 2021.
Yes, right. So what happened was, see, clever obfuscation.
They're hiding this. It's actually existed in the report since like 2021.
In the lead-up of the 2020 election, right, they hid the intel from the administration because they thought that they would use that intel and say, look, China's trying to interfere to help Biden, and that would help Trump in the election. Now, they had no problem spreading the intel that Russia's trying to interfere to help Trump, and Biden using that. And so what he's saying is that's okay that they covered it up because after the election and our side won, well, then they admitted, and by the way, China was trying to interfere. I'm sorry, that doesn't cut the mustard. If this was the opposite, and imagine how this debate's going if Trump did what the Obama administration did. Imagine in 2020 he came out and said, okay, I concede, I lost, right? And then he says, now we're going to write a phony baloney, we're going to pay a foreign asset to come up with some opposition research saying that China, worked and colluded with the Biden administration in order to steal the election, and we're going to get FISA warrants, and we're going to slow drip this for the next 4 years. And Fox News and Breitbart and all these places every day are going to be shouting at President Biden, who's going to be eating chocolate chip ice cream or some shit. Oh, yeah, China did this, China did. He'd be like, I've never seen such authoritarianism, weaponizing our FBI to get illegal warrants based on your own opposition research. But when it's the Democrats, yeah, but at least Hillary said I concede. That's literally the argument. Never forget what Russiagate was them taking Hillary, who had colluded, her team, which had colluded with Russia, to accuse Trump of doing the same. And so instead of investigating Hillary, who actually did get misinformation from Russians and actually did use it to influence our elections, they investigated Trump, who, what a shame, the results found that he didn't. Oh well, too late, 4 years of ruining his administration. Again, he wants to waffle back and forth between it's the rhetoric that matters too. Well, this rhetoric doesn't meet the standard of being fascist or ultranationalist, etc. And it's more about the actions that you're taking specifically. But don't look at the actions too, because the actions could be the opposite of X. I remind you, your own author says that I could be an authoritarian, populist, ultranationalist, or whatever, and still not be a fascist. All of this is just selective cope by you. You haven't argued that Trump's not palingenetic, which means that you should prefer my definition from Roger Griffin, who specifically says, here is the minimum. You must be palingenetic, you must be populist, and you must be ultranationalist. And Trump is not two of the three.
First of all, my author just doesn't say that. That's also why when he's exploring different European groups that he thinks have elements of fascism, he usually takes things that they have in common. So people like Le Pen, when they are obviously very populist and when they are very obsessed with the idea of national decline, and then their big focus is immigration, because obviously the outgroups is a big part of it. But then he says, well, it doesn't seem like they've shown any indication that they want to subvert elections. Or when he talks about other dictators, like say in Iran, he gives a more on the fence position because obviously Ruhollah Khomeini was very populist and he was obviously massively authoritarian. But when it came to his nationalism, it's a bit harder to pigeonhole it because for Islamic nationalists, like the Ummah is the nation, like all of Islam is the nation. So that's like where he maybe has his own different, and also the theocracy is a slightly different thing from how he understands fascism. But that's why I'm doing it by examples. That's probably why you probably can't think of anyone who has those pillars that I mentioned that I derived quite easily from that book, which is that they don't trust the democratic process, i.e. authoritarian, or they don't respect it, and then that they believe in some kind of national revival of a humiliated nation at the hands of an in-group and of a hostile in-group and a hostile international community, and that they're populist. I don't think there's any regime that he's spoken about that.
But that's because you define those specific terms in specific ways. Well, populist only means this hyper-specific thing. Again, I'm reading from direct.
I'm not being
authors.
hyper-specific. I'm just qualifying.
Please.
I'm just qualifying it to set it apart from. I think people should vote.
I'm reading from exact authors that are seeking to identify what fascism is and what their definition of populism is. He's like, nah, I'm just qualifying with some things. Notice how when he wants to qualify and not give a real definition, he's just putting qualifiers. It's okay to look at the actions that specific countries have taken. But when I look at the actions that Mussolini specifically took, he goes, that's not important. Sometimes he'll do X, sometimes he'll do the opposite of X. So when it suits him, he says, we point to these examples and show that that's an example of populism, right? We don't really have a clear-cut definition of what populism is, but here's some examples of things that we would see. When I'm reading an actual definition, he's like, no, we should just ignore that. Same with the question of ultranationalism, or the type of nationalism that he's talking about. Let me ask you this. If I call, if you support Medicare for all, are you a communist?
No.
Okay. Why not? Isn't that a communist policy?
I just realized where this is going. Fuck. That is it's a policy that communists do, but that's not what a communist society or someone who's like a communist would just say that like is enough. So no.
And so let's say I did 4 other policies that were like big social policies. Would that be enough to make me a communist?
That would make you a social democrat.
Gotcha. So it would be more about my ideas behind it, my ideology, correct? So I could support those same 4 policies and actually be a communist if my ideology was to be a communist, right?
Yeah, but the difference is that communists are a lot more honest about what they seem to want when it comes to economic policy. They're dishonest about everything else, but they're honest when it comes to...
Can we agree we hate the commies? Can we both agree with that?
Yeah,
yes,
but they are very, very honest about what they want when it comes to the economy. They'll say that they are...
One smart thing you said today. Yeah. Is Trump an ideologue?
Is Trump an ideologue? Not really. Like, kind of, but his ideology is, again, it's very nebulous. This is, do you want to go to the notes again? Or?
What's fascism? Is it an ideology?
I've described it as a political behavior.
So fascism is an ideology, and he just admitted to you, Trump's not really an ideologue. It's nebulous. Just like that. Well, here's the truth.
Did Griffin say that fascism is not ideologically nebulous? And I also said this in my opening statement as well.
Griffin outlined specifically.
Fascism, more than any other movement, is one that has basically functioned without much of a solid party program.
I think most lefties actually say that Trump's a demagogue more than an ideologue, correct?
How is a demagogue more than an ideologue?
An ideologue, like for example, I'll appeal to our great esteemed
What's consistent with Trump respecting elections when he loses?
Trump comes out and he's like, hey man, we should get rid of bump stocks. Remember that happened in the first term? And his audience was like, what the fuck? What is this guy talking about? Get rid of bump stocks? So then like 3 days later, Trump's like, never mind. Now, is there anyone that voted for Trump that thinks like, ideologically, Trump's a staunch Second Amendment? They'd be like, no, he's not really an ideologue. Trump's sort of a guy that's like a delegate. He's listening to his base. He's listening to other people. He brings people in the room that disagree with each other. He likes to sit in like a big chair and be like, yeah, we're going to compromise. We're going to do this. This isn't an ideologue. He's not taking actions because he's ultra-nationalist, because he's like the state above all, or that he has this. If anything, he's taking actions because he wants to be personally liked. And this is, by the way, the narrative of the left puts all the time out there, right? Now we want to believe that Trump, he's always, with the left, he's always 2 things simultaneously. He's a buffoon, but an evil genius. He's this staunch ideological fascist. Fuck it, he's just picking and choosing as he goes. And you'll get around this by saying, well, but fascism, more than any other ideology, it could do one thing one day and one another. Yeah, but the key part, as if he's just said, is you have to have that ideology. You could do X and then do Y, and that doesn't make you a communist, even if communists like X and Y. It is your thought process, your reasoning for it, your ideology. And Trump's reasoning isn't because he's some fascist that believes like staunchly in a apologenic state or populism or ultranationalism. Trump's reasoning for that is because he wants to be well respected. He wants to be a guy that's considered historic. He wants to be a guy who's actually doing things that are good for the people that he claims to represent. That's not fascism. And given that your own argument is you could actually meet every pillar of fascism and that doesn't make you a fascist, then the key distinction would be the ideology. And when you say he's not really an ideologue, it gives the game away.
Well, I would give the game away if I was ever conceding that the idea that just because you're not necessarily an ideologue means you can't be a fascist. I don't understand why you.
So then,
what?
Okay, then let's. Do you mind if I promise I'll let you interrupt me next? Ready? Can you define then, if there's no minimum for what is a fascist, What is it that makes you a fascist? It would have to be
Well,
the ideology,
there
right?
can be a minimum. It depends on whether or not you describe the form of nationalism that fascists take as being an ideology. You could say it is, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like it's like an ideologue on the spectrum of being like the least kind of ideologue, as in like you're the least likely to have a consistent program, or you're the most likely to change your opinion on things without ever justifying it to anyone. Like you're the most likely person, like Mussolini, the very first time that he offered a program of fascism, one of the clauses in it was a rejection of war and imperialism. He dropped it after a few months. No new wars. The same thing with Hitler, again, downplaying his anti-Semitism or constantly shifting his economic policy. Because again, with fascism, it draws its doctrine, if you want to call it that, or its semblance of an ideology or doctrine, mostly from the cult of the leader. That's why no successful fascist regime ever has succeeded after their leader died, because of the stock that they put in their leader. And
so then, wait, okay, do you think Trump's going to leave
Wait,
power?
did anything I just say not make sense there? In the sense that, yeah, there's a kind of ideology, but it's also quite nebulous, and it's a lot more to do with the cult of the leader, or the story, or the emotional appeal of the masses, that this is kind of more where fascism comes from. You acknowledge that programs are not a very fascist thing to do, right? Hitler had a 20. Hitler had a 20. What do you mean in general? Like a party ideological program, like a doctrine. So Hitler had a program in like 1920 of 25 points. He ignored pretty much all of it. Mussolini's program didn't really fully form until he was taken into power. And some would argue as well, that I think quite convincingly, that so much of what's in that program was not exactly what he was doing.
Okay, I get it. So yes, programs in general don't make you a fascist. I've outlined the 3 pillars of fascism. My point that I'm making, though, is if you don't have a minimum, which your author doesn't, and you don't give what the minimum would be, and you can meet all of these metrics and still not be considered a fascist, what we would use to determine would be what is your ideology. When you admit Trump's not really an ideologue, he's sort of wishy-washy, he wants to think whatever he wants, now you're backtracking. Well, it's on a continuum, like he's low on the threshold because you realize once more that you gave the game away. At the end of the day, the important thing to remember is this, right? You can't prove that he's an ultranationalism. I'm giving clear definitions. I'm giving a clear definition of populist, which he needs to prove. I'm saying that populist basically means every candidate is populist. I'm giving you a clear definition of ultranationalism, that it's like the country above all else. He gives these nebulous definitions. He himself as an individual has changed what he means from 5 years ago to fascism to what he means today. And the most important thing is, if you're sitting here and you're watching, right, and you're like, I don't know, some of this is like over my head, or it's just two bloviating fools just up there talking about whatever. Ask yourself this: could reasonable people disagree on what the definition of fascism would be? So why is it that they want to use this term? The reason is because they don't really give a shit. It's not like, oh, the horrible thing is like the war in Iran and like these expansionist policies, or his anti-regulation or this. They don't want to talk about specific policies. They want a label. Lonerbox says it in his opening statement. It's important to like nip it in the bud before it gets starting. We're not concerned about end results, etc. They're using this term because they know that it fires up their base. And even in the specific community you're in, Lonerbox, we hear that the guy that's sort of the head of it has his mod saying there are school shooter vibes. Go back to the fact that within 24 hours, you said, why shouldn't we, or when should we have taken out Hitler? Do you have anything to say for the people on your side that use the rhetoric that you're espousing to justify their violent impulses against law enforcement, against people that support Donald Trump, against the White House press correspondents dinner, or against Trump or any of the people in the administration? Anything you'd like to say to them?
I want to give you a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I'll probably say that given that
Q&A.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, given that you were in that stream with me, and they had a stream like on that particular day, and probably argued more convincingly than like any other liberal or leftist probably could about why you can't just say because, well, this person resembles this ideology close enough to even put them under the same label, that's not a good reason to shoot them. Then I don't know. It seems like I should get quite a fair measure on that.
You said
as much as well.
It's like the footnote. Here's the message that 5 million people see, but my footnote that 100 people read, I was like, oh, and don't shoot him. But you know the impression that got from that tweet.
We're at the time to go into the Q&A. I want to say, folks, please join me in applauding our speakers. That was
So when James said there was only 2 minutes left, one thing I don't like about this format is that you don't have a chance for closing statement. So I tried to use that last part as sort of my closing statement there. I had more specifically to say on what he was saying, but I think that you can see by the end of it, maybe I could have done a better job of focusing on why you should prefer Griffin and why Trump wasn't palingenetic. But I think ultimately, it got a little convoluted, which is partially my fault. But I was arguing the idea of ultranationalism specifically, that Trump doesn't meet it. And that if we accept his definition of ultranationalism, then we would see multiple parties would meet it. When we accept his definition of an authoritarianism, we could see that the Democrats would meet that as well. They didn't really concede the election, etc. But I think that the part that I really wanted to drive home, which he didn't have an answer for, was how he used this rhetoric immediately, and he knew what the response would be. He knew when he sent out that tweet 24 hours after a Trump assassination attempt, at what time should we have taken out Hitler. He knew what the message he was sending was. He knew it. And by the way, the violence hasn't tamped down. The threats haven't tamped down. He said in his opening statement, in this security environment. Right. Exactly. Oh, look at that. Agent 47 says, that's me. How about that? All right, let's get to the Q&A. There's some good stuff that happens here as well.
Amazing. Column on the main description box, and then question, Terry expect public. We really okay.
Where do you draw the is what you don't want? So where do you draw the line there? Pretty sure. Yeah. So question for Lonerbox is like, where do you draw the line between ultranationalism and nationalism? Because I'm pretty sure we could agree that nationalism would be a safe bet, but ultranationalism is what you don't want. So where do you draw the line there?
Why have I got long hair was the second question.
Where do you draw the line there?
Okay, yeah, I got you. Okay.
How can you not understand
like
the one
tangent.
European guy here?
I thought I just heard, oh, also, why do you have long hair? Okay, weird. All right, it's not even that long. So when it comes to like giving definitions in general, I suppose like most of the words that we know and understand, like we don't really learn them from definitions. We learn them from just getting examples. When it comes to nationalism versus like ultranationalism, or I would probably say that it comes to in the sense that nationalists can often be cooperative, for example, with the international community. Like they can have an opinion like, oh, I love France, we're the greatest country ever, but also we like the EU and we like our international allies and everything else. I feel like ultranationalists tend to be, they view the world in a lot more like zero-sum terms. Like the international community broadly is like the enemy, or it's like they're undermining us. So like I can see a nationalist wanting to, you know, protect their interests and things like that, or to pursue deals. But I think when you go into the territory of getting someone to calculate what your trade deficit is with 100 different countries, and then using that percentage, halving it, and then imposing a tariff on it, which has nothing to do with trade deficits, and then just saying, yeah, they're charging us, so we're going to do this, then you're a lot more standoffish, and I think you're going more into the kind of like hostile nationalism or ultranationalism. I think ultranationalism is a lot more hostile to the rest of the world.
So would you say that Trump's tariff policies would be ultranationalist and not nationalist?
They're like an example of it, like to that extent, yeah.
That'd be ultra. So then how else would you protect your own domestic markets?
Well, he didn't protect domestic markets. There were lots of companies that had to close because of those tariffs, and the stock markets got absolutely royally fucked until he had to reset them. So, yeah, you can protect markets, but again, protecting markets is different from, we have a trade deficit with all the rest of the world because we're America, we're the money where people can be whatever they want to be, and they make all the money in the world, and we have all this advantage on the planet. To we're upset because we don't buy as much from Mozambique as they buy from us. That's not really like protecting your own trade and industry.
I'll just say this real quick, like funny how he said there. You know, when it comes to definitions, maybe we should just look at examples. Yeah, like Mussolini, which is exactly what I did.
And
it was
Hitler,
like all of these things are the opposite of Trump, and you're like, no, it doesn't matter because of the definition.
I'll give you the last word, Lonerbox, and then we'll go to the next question.
Yeah, examples being more than one person, which also includes Hitler and everything. And so much of what you were saying about Mussolini wouldn't apply to Hitler, who's also a fascist. But yeah.
My question's for Lonerbox. You said in your opening that Trump hates elections. I think that was the quote. If he hates elections so much, why do I see him pushing and fighting towards things like the SAVE Act and strengthening election integrity? I don't see him saying anything about ending universal suffrage or restricting or abolishing elections. It seems that he wants us to have safe and fair
Look how good
elections.
JS looks there with this
Seems
suit.
like, first of all, just a very broad agreement. Politicians will sometimes hide their desires. That's just broadly. Okay. But second of all, I'm sorry, but if you don't see, if people at this
He's
point,
just not fascist enough to get it done. You're saying.
no, he's not powerful enough to get it done. He tried. He tried to undermine an election that he lost. He tried to undermine an election that he lost. He tried to, again, anyone is welcome to tell me why the fuck Trump put a fake elector slate from New Mexico where he didn't even claim to have won the popular vote.
Because he thought there was corruption in the entire country and wanted to have challenges.
I just threw in New Mexico for a laugh.
Let's go with Lonerbox here. Politicians will sometimes hide what they say. Unless Hillary says, I concede, then that absolutely means she concedes, even though she concocts a scheme to talk with Russians to get misinformation to send to the FBI to thwart 4 years of Trump's presidency. But as long as she says the magic words, I concede, good enough for Lonerbox. But if Trump says things, that's hiding his power level, please.
Given the original question was for you, I want to give you the last word if you want it.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
For a lot of the time at the beginning of this debate, my question's for Rob. You spent a lot of time defending Trump's actions during the January 6th and the lead up to it as if he believed that there was corruption, and you guys did it just then too. But what would you say to all of the coterie around Donald Trump that was telling him that he lost? So Bill Barr, Bill Stipin, even his own daughter, Ivanka Trump. What information was Trump working with to believe that there was fraud, that all the other people, all the other high-ranking officials around him telling him there wasn't fraud? What was he working with other than fascistic tendencies to steal the election himself?
Well, it wouldn't be fascistic tendencies. It could be the overwhelming circumstantial evidence that he saw, like when we saw like pipes break and election stop, etc. But even if I accept that we shouldn't look at that, which I don't.
Wait, evidence he saw that the other people didn't?
Well, no, because you're erroneous here. Like, for example, Bill Barr said that they looked into all this stuff. We now see that that's not the case, right? He also had people around him telling him that there were things going on, like Cindy Powell. right? So he had people, you might not like her, that's fine, that's your right. I don't particularly like what happened with the alternate electors. My theory is there probably was shenanigans, but I think a lot of that in the debate this morning, I think this is something that Destiny's absolutely right about. Many of these policies that were voted for vote-in mail by COVID were fucking supported by local Republicans. In my state, in Pennsylvania, they had what's called Act 77. Then it's sour grapes once it doesn't go your way to be like, hey, wait a minute. But Republicans supported it. And so I didn't like it. I didn't think it was fascist. I also think that it was one in a long line of, if I listen to, Destiny or whatever talk about like definitions of insurrection, the definition of insurrection, just like fascism here, was so broad that it meets all sorts of other people. Then you can see the ideological inconsistency because that definition of insurrection would basically, let's see if I get this right. It was two or more people gathered for a public purpose, like pushing back against a law or specific law enforcement using violence or intimidation. That's Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
That's ICE riots. Where are all the lefties when we see insurrection, hundreds of them happening here? All of a sudden, no one gives a shit.
Okay. So just real quick. So you might not like the programs or you might not like the way the voting system is set up, but again, you haven't responded to my question of like, what do you have to say about the other executive like people around Donald Trump?
There were people telling them that it was stolen.
Okay, but what evidence were they working with that the other people?
Well, that's a different
denied?
question.
Yeah,
That's a different question.
You won't be able to answer it.
You acknowledge there were people, and so when you said everyone around him was saying this,
Yes,
that's
Donald
incorrect.
Trump surrounds himself with schizos, but like that doesn't.
Okay, so now first it was everyone around him said this. Then when I show that that's not the case, you're like, well, because he surrounds himself with schizos. Maybe he thought the people he surrounded him with saying that it wasn't stolen were schizos.
Thank you.
Good question, though. Thanks, man.
James, do I get to speak to that one? Or-
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was going to say, yeah, there's nothing interesting or curious about the fact that Trump was told by the people that he hired to do the job of investigating into these issues when they told him that what he was looking for wasn't there. Yeah, it's not a coincidence. It's not like a strange thing that his private lawyers that he hired were telling him everything that he wanted to hear. That is not surprising. And again, it's always these errors that Trump seems to make that always go in the same direction. So many of these claims that came up from 2020 don't even exist anymore. Like they just don't make them because they were shot down so hard. Now, the things they're talking about, it wasn't just cherry picking earlier, Rob. I went through a few of the claims that he made. The China acquisition was one thing, that one actor in China downloaded publicly available voter information for 6 states. We don't know why. Also in Michigan, he tried to say that there was some canvassing operation that was registering a bunch of like fake voters, but even the FBI, both Trump's FBI right in 2025 and the Democrat FBI from Biden's administration, both found that there wasn't criminal action here. They found that like, it was people making errors. So again, and none of the votes were cast. None of the weird vote applications were actually cast. So and in a year's time, the new claims will be completely different, and they'll drop these ones.
The key thing is this: do you really think Trump didn't think it was stolen?
No, I think he knew he was lying. Yeah.
Okay, I disagree. I think if Trump knew
Not
he
that it
was lying,
matters, but
let me explain. If Trump knew he was lying, why the fuck would he keep bringing it up?
What?
If he knew it was a lie, okay, he won now. You don't have to keep. He still is demanding, like, I want it looked into more. If he knew he was lying, he'd say, stop looking into it. I was lying. He believes it. And so the idea that this is some sort of anti-democratic fascist thing, no, he thought that the election was stolen, and he may be proven to be right at some point. In many ways, it was stolen when you see the interference that we had from the FBI, covering up interference from China, covering up the Hunter Biden laptop story that 1/3 of Democrats polled afterwards said that could possibly change their vote if they knew the truth of. So the massive amount of censorship that our official agencies putting their thumb on the scale, which they did from 2016 to 2020, probably was enough to spin the scales, even if none of these allegations of voter fraud happened.
My question is for Lonerbox. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Trump was accused by his detractors of resisting the control measures that were put in place, namely, just to name a few, restrictions on assembly, travel, compulsion to get the vaccine, furloughs. And this was the primary basis for which they claimed that he mismanaged that pandemic. Wouldn't any fascist worth their salt be in favor of those quote-unquote power grabs?
Not necessarily, because especially when it's a pandemic, you need to care about what your voters want as well. You need to care about what people support you want to say. And we know that Republicans were more likely to oppose the lockdowns. We know that Republicans were more likely to be vaccine skeptics and all that. So yeah, it makes sense. Like, why does Trump need that power?
Right, but any authoritarian, anybody who has a disposition, even a personal disposition towards authoritarianism, wouldn't have the personal disgust that Trump had towards those power grabs. He actually expressed many times in debates and interviews, he actually had a personal disgust towards the people that were in favor of those things, in many cases.
Yeah, he might have done, but again, that might mean that he believes in the civil liberty to go out and get sick and die. But besides that, he still does not, like, when I mentioned authoritarian, like the more fundamental, like the very clear split is whether or not you think that people should be able to freely pursue elections. And that means that you accept when you lose, which Trump didn't.
Again, 2/3 of Democrats polled in 2018 thought that Russia personally interfered with election systems to cheat the Democrats from the vote. This is directly because of the rhetoric of Hillary Clinton and else saying that she was cheated, that Russia stole the election. He doesn't have a problem with it.
Well, no Democratic leader has tried to coup the government, so.
But you said it's not the action, it's the rhetoric. That's what you said.
From the very beginning, I said they both matter, obviously, but the actions probably matter more.
Oh, so then what would the threshold be for when that was a not accepting the election? Oh, I forgot. She said the magic word. I concede. That's it. That's all you have.
Well, no, you'd probably have to do a bit more. You probably have to do something a bit closer to trying to tell your vice president to make you president when you didn't win.
What if you told your FBI
Trump
a bunch
told
of
his vice
Russia-sourced
president.
bullshit to get illegal warrants to spy on your opponent?
Even if that's all true, that's not as bad as telling your vice president to unilaterally make you president when you lost an election.
That's not what he did.
You're
He
never
said
going to find anything.
except-
He did, yes. Mike Pence admitted this, yes.
He
We should probably jump to the next one.
All right, so my question's for Lonerbox. So you brought up Hitler many times throughout this debate and kept calling him a fascist, even though I would argue that fascism and Nazi are separate categories and should be argued as such. Even if we grant that Hitler was a fascist, how does this non sequitur actually prove that the Mango Mussolini is in fact a fascist?
Prove that what, Mussolini, sorry?
How does Hitler being a fascist, this total non sequitur, have anything to do with proving whether or not the Mango Mussolini himself, the greatest threat ever, is in fact a fascist?
Oh, why does it have anything to do with proving Trump is a fascist?
It's a non sequitur.
Oh, well,
How
that
is it
was-
relevant?
It's irrelevant to whether or not Hitler. Well, no, it would matter because the debate is over whether or not Trump's a fascist, and we're defining a fascist. So I think probably an easier way to start is to take two people who everyone agrees is a fascist, like Trump and Hitler and Mussolini.
So you have to prove Hillary Clinton is a Democrat to prove that Biden was a Democrat as well?
Sorry?
Do you have to prove that Hillary Clinton was a Democrat to then prove that Biden's a Democrat?
It depends on what the debate is. Like, it depends on what the debate is, because if the debate is talking about what makes you a fascist, and I know there are people, because maybe you're unaware, but like there are people who do think that like Mussolini is like the only fascist, or like you even alluded to that. So yeah, that's an important argument if we're going to talk about what qualities fascists have, because some of the qualities that Hitler had, Mussolini didn't.
Lonerbox, you're a lot of fun to talk. You contradict yourself. You're like, everybody agrees that Hitler and Mussolini are fascists, and then like 2 sentences later, some people think that only Mussolini's a fascist. Right? So can you name me one?
Should I have said 99% of people?
Real quick, can you name me one fascist that didn't have like massive economic regulation?
That didn't have massive economic
Hitler did,
regulation.
right? The National Socialist did.
Hitler did when he went to war.
Before that, he was.
Not massive economic regulation. No, the businesses were allowed to do generally what they wanted.
Was
That's
he
a common
rolling
myth.
back
Yeah.
regulations?
Was he rolling back? Mussolini did the first 2 years. Hitler, did he roll back? Probably some measure of the Weimar Republic. I'm not sure.
I think that it's clear that Trump is the opposite of that. He's not nationalizing industry
Well,
for
just to be-
ultranationalism.
Okay.
Perfect timing. So my first part of my question was going to be for both of you, besides Mussolini, and you would say Hitler, what other leader of any country or area has ever been a fascist?
Leaders of countries. Franco, there's a bit of a debate about him. He was probably, I think he would quite easily cross fascist for when he was at war. And then afterwards, he just became a more standard authoritarian dictator. So Franco's quite an easy one. I'm quite happy with saying that Ruhollah Khomeini is a fascist. So probably those two.
It's difficult. Like it could be that all of those groups are. It really could. Like Hitler, it's debatable as well. The reason that I think that everyone agrees, the one everyone can agree on, is Mussolini, and that's why I think that the focus of looking on that, that's where the term was coined. That's the one that everyone agrees on, and so we look at the behaviors there. I think that's the most important thing. He doesn't have a minimum threshold, so even if you engage in some of these actions, it's basically just pick and choose if you choose to call them a fascist based on him. So I'm trying to stick to the bare minimum that I think this one is one we can all agree on.
Right. So you would say maybe just Mussolini. And
Perhaps.
it sounds like the definition of fascism is Mussolini because he made it up and called himself that. And again, back to your point. So you're saying that, like, again, you're just taking this term and attaching it to whoever, but you can hardly define who's a fascist. And so that's why the term is just used to apply to someone you want to associate with Mussolini and Hitler. That's the point of the word fascist.
That is
because
absolutely
only
correct. That is exactly what's happening. To justify violent impulses against people that you want to label a fascist or a racist or an insurrectionist, constant changing of these definitions and labels because it carries baggage. If I said a progressive tax rate is really bad, you should hate those people. People are going to be like, eh. If I said a progressive tax rate is fascist, and so therefore James is a fascist, people would be like, well, we hate fascists. What makes him a fascist? And I'm like, oh, progressive tax rate. You see the difference? When you put that term in there, it inspires something into people. And when you're saying 24 hours after a Trump assassination attempt, at what point should we take out Hitler? I think the message is clear.
I want to give you a chance to respond if you want one.
I don't know if I'm sure James can confirm this. The very first time I was asked to this debate, I think I asked to change the topic to "Is Trump a threat to democracy?"
Now, this is a startling admission because you'll remember in my opening statement, I said the truth is we're both bullshitters. And this is the truth. This was the topic brought before us. I didn't pick this topic. I got this topic 3 days before the debate, maybe 4 days before the debate. I said, what happens is people like us get a debate, then we do some research, and we're like, oh, okay. But before that, we're only doing the research for the debate. It's not like we spent our life looking into this shit when it comes to the definitions of these terms. So the entire time that either of us were using this word fascism, up until we started prepping for this debate, we weren't thinking what Robert Paxton or Roger Griffin sang. I would have told you fascism, some sort of corporatist authoritarian movement. That's basically how I would have looked at fascism. Right? Lonerbox would have had his own colloquial definition. It wasn't until we were given the debate that we started to look into these specific definitions. So then you can't use as an excuse, well, 4 months ago when I called Trump a fascist, I meant it in the way that Robert Paxton means it. That's not what he meant, and that's not what I would have meant. That's my criticism. The way that he was using this word was designed to inspire anger and hatred against Trump, which is leading to violence, which is particularly exemplified in the fact that he said 24 hours after an assassination attempt, at what point should we have taken out Hitler? So for him to admit what he's about to here just proves my entire opening.
And then the answer was no. So okay, I pondered it for a little bit. Sorry for the slow reply, James. I'm sorry. But I started reading about fascism from Paxton's definition and from a few articles. And the more I thought about it, like I just saw, like actually Trump does actually capture these traits maybe even more than I used to think. It doesn't necessarily mean like the more fascist you are, the more bad you are. Imperial Japan, most scholars say, wasn't fascist, and they killed a lot more people than Mussolini or Franco or Ruhollah Khomeini or even the Nazis did. So I think the term was quite clearly defined with the populist, national revivalist authoritarianism. That was quite
This
clear.
is shocking. This is a shocking admission. By the way, obviously I wasn't involved with the original creating of the topic. But what's shocking here is, so wait, when did you, I could ask you, James doesn't need to respond. When did you first agree to take this debate?
I don't remember exactly when.
3 months ago, maybe?
Yeah.
So then when
Give or
all
take, yeah.
your posts saying Trump's a fascist, Trump's a fascist, Trump's a fascist,
I know what you're
Trump's
about
a-
to- okay.
You're like, I actually didn't know what the fuck it meant when I was saying it all those times. That's your argument?
No.
So when you were making comparisons to Hitler, you're like, I didn't know.
I'm gonna give Lonerbox the last word, and we have to go to the last question. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's quite simple. You can have an understanding of what a word means or what a political ideology is without knowing like a very strict definition or like what academics say about it. And you can also just think that it's maybe a better question to ask, because definition debates are not like my top pick. But again, I agreed to it because the more I just read a bit more about it, keyword more there, Rob, and then thought that actually this definition actually works pretty well for Trump. Yeah.
Because Hitler.
No.
Well, I want to give him the last word, but we're ready for the next question, and it's got to be short and pithy.
Rob, that was a great aside. It's going to add to my question to Lonerbox. Given the added context of your vague past tweets right after the attempted assassination of Trump, seemingly questioning if it was morally justified to assassinate Hitler before he got his fascism project rolling, can you unveil your true intention to the audience of what your true intention is of calling Trump and his supporters fascists?
Yeah, I did a stream right after that tweet. I explained very clearly to my audience, I'm not actually that much of a gung-ho person, you might have noticed. Yeah, I was actually quite clear to my audience when I said that that was like an interesting debate because people have it all the time about when was the appropriate time to kill Hitler, given what they knew at the time. And I said at the time, even with Hitler, well, same with Trump, you don't really go after people who you think are threats to democracy or threats to your country when you still have electoral options to get rid of them. If they coup the government and if they actually succeed and if they take control and then you can't vote them out, then people have to start pursuing other measures maybe.
Can I, real quick, just to give you an
Super
idea
quick.
of how this goes, I totally agree. Lonerbox, you're kind of...
And you know what I said that when we spoke about that tweet on that day.
We're softies,
Yeah.
I think. We're little softies, but just to give you an idea what's going on, he's associated with the community of lefties like Destiny. One of the former orbiters, I think he's not in good graces now, his name's Connor. I was debating Connor, and Connor said, we have a moral obligation to kill all fascists that are in political power. So it's not too hard to see when the general message you're getting from the community is, Trump's a fascist, Trump's a fascist. Oh, if he's a fascist, we should kill him. And then like people like Destiny saying, the worst thing that could happen was that assassin's bullet missing Trump. Pretty clear to see why Destiny's mod now says that community sponsoring, and I quote, school shooter vibes. That's the shit that's going on.
All right, do me a favor, hold your applause until I get through these housekeeping things. Just want to make sure that people get them.
That's pretty much it. That's the debate. So, yeah. So I let that run more than I normally would reviewing a debate because it was me, but I'll leave you all make up your own mind. I didn't think it was particularly close. I thought that on the topic of whether or not he was a fascist, I think I had a better understanding of the source of the authors. And I think that he tried to shoehorn in very hyper-specific things. The word authoritarian doesn't really mean authoritarian in the way everyone else uses it. It only means questioning election results. But when Hillary's team did it, well, it wasn't as bad as when Trump did it, right? Populist doesn't mean what everyone else says populist mean. Populist means I still am unsure. And ask yourself this, do you even know what his fucking definition is by the end of this? Do you even know? He defines it, like, what's his definition of ultranationalism? What's his definition of authoritarian? What's his definition of populist? He says those are the three things that are necessary, but what's his definition of those three things? It's just all over the place. I'm giving a specific definition. I'm arguing that it gives a specific criteria, and the author that outlined that has a minimum for where it's a fascist, unlike his author, and that author not only says Trump isn't a fascist, but it's easy to see looking that he's not an ultranationalist. He's not palingenetic. But more importantly, I think I'm making the point that they're using this term specifically for a specific group of actions that they want to occur. So, but I'll leave you all to decide. Do I think it was a perfect performance on my part? No, but I thought I did very well. Searsight, thanks for the 20. Says, good evening, Rob. I can't put my frustration with these people into words. They destroy everything they gain any sway over, and in the end, they run cover for commies. Thanks for absolutely dragging them in debates like this. Thank you. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun. I did. I had fun with that debate. I was polite. You know, I obviously was joking around a bit, but was pretty polite. Unfortunately, Lonerbox didn't like that. He thought it was odd that me and others were polite to him. What can you do? I guess we should have been assholes. You know? But yeah, that was the debate. So, I have another one coming up. I'm going to get I'll have more specifics tomorrow, but it's going to be for Brandon Straka's walkaway debate. I'll be debating a 3-on-3 debate. I don't know. It was supposed to be Rachel Wilson. I don't think she's going to be in the debate anymore. So I will have two partners, and I'll be going against Alex Stein and two people on conspiracy theories. And I think the Charlie Kirk stuff will come up, so that should be good. So I'll have more details for you on that tomorrow. Matt Flynn, $10, says, biggest takeaway for me was when he did an interview after the debate that he was dumbfounded at the idea of people being polite. Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. Jay Dyer's my partner? I don't know. That could be. Jay Dyer's going to be my partner for that debate? Really? Where did you guys hear that? Are you sure? Because there's a series of debates going on. Yeah, I think Jay might be doing a different debate. So I was not told. I really don't know though. So I was told by Brandon Straka's team that they'll have all the details starting tomorrow. Yeah, maybe it'll be Candace. Wouldn't that be great? That debate is going to be on August 8th in Dallas in person. I would assume Brandon Straka will be streaming it to his YouTube channel. So again, I'll have more details for you tomorrow. So also, I've been offered another debate with Modern Day Debate at DebateCon 9. So I have to see whether or not the dates work for me. I have to talk to my wife and figure that out. But it could be that I will be at DebateCon 9 debating as well. I would like to, but I just don't know if it's going to work. I think that I might have a family function over that time, so we shall see. So now I'm looking. Al Sayed did. Now it's looking that might lose, and Stevens might be winning. I don't know. So we're probably not going to know until tomorrow. Is it going to be a full-blown commie that's the Democrat candidate in Michigan? Or will it just be a sock dem that wants to pack the court and open the borders? We shall see. Who knows? Exciting times, isn't it? Who the hell knows? Your definition of fascism from Al Jazeera. Smart. I am rough. I'm fucking sick. I mean, what can you do? I'll be all right. I'll make it down there. Take me some vitamin C and I'll be all right. So, all right. I guess it's the time of the night where we do grifting. So anyone wants to leave, I totally get it. I would leave. I wouldn't support me. But we didn't reach the goal last night, so it'd be nice if we reached the super chat goal tonight. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Now, Rumble's going on a 3-day streak. This will be the 3rd day. That they win, but they're losing. In fact, I don't believe we've had one donation on Rumble. So they're officially $245. $245 behind at this point. Also, if we don't get another donation, at least you could say we're at 69%. Ha! I don't really know what that number means, but people laugh at it for some reason. It's like the 6-7 thing. So we do these stupid whip wheel things. Oh, who did that? Yeah. We do these stupid whip wheel things. I only have one that I owe from our great friend, the legend, Unforced Ego. Absolute legend that he is. Saw one song. Lavin will see him. Looks like Rumble's going to come up short tonight. They had a chance for the trifecta. They're going to lose. That's okay. They're still more surly than the YouTube audience. They could say more curse words over there. So I owe one song, $100 dono. We spin this stupid whip wheel. $150, you could pick a specific song. $200, you could create a new one. I did not add me singing to the whip wheel because no one paid $200 to have it added. So, also, collectively, if you get to an even $100 number, that's a song. So at this point, $45 would be a whip song. $100 would be 2. You'd get one for the $100 and one for making it past the $300. Or why do you do this if you hate yourself this much? I don't know. I don't hate myself. I don't like the whip thing, but I like money. This is my job. Do you have a job? Why do you go to work? Millions of people work at jobs that they would sooner not be doing for money. That's why. Mangozi, $20 over on Rumble, says $20, says, no donos, madness. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Wickeder than thou, $5, I thank you. Truth Revolt, $10 says, I know that debate didn't turn into whataboutism, but how are you able to bring up points that the left do the same without it being a whataboutism? Great debate as always. What does whataboutism mean? One of the foundational beliefs of our legal system is that we should have the same set of rules for everyone. So my concern is that, like, here's how I view whataboutism. It depends on what your target is or what the subject of the complaint you're making is. So, for example, if the subject of the complaint is, I say, I should be allowed to steal from you because other people steal. That's whataboutism. That doesn't justify me stealing. But if my criticism is the police allowed you to steal, but they're going after me for stealing, that's not whataboutism because the focus of my criticism is on the police. You see? So with here, my criticism is to Lonerbox. You have a definition that, if we accept your definition, would mean that these other groups are also authoritarian, ultranationalist, etc. So he could say that's whataboutism, but what it's showing is he has a double standard in how he's applying these terms. That's my, that's how I deal with that. But Dartho Moss, $20 says, hey, Rob, get yourself some chicken soup and a shot of bourbon. Oh, I can't do bourbon. That'll fix you right up. Thank you, man. And then look at this legend. RPR Aquatic, $100. Thank you so much. Says, I give to Andrew. Here you go. I give enough to Andrew. Here you go. Thank you. That's what Andrew gets for not streaming. Oh, and then Wade Buggs, 50, says, for the community. Oh, shit. Now I got to start doing math. So we passed 300. We passed 400. That's 2. $200 donations. That's 4. All right, I owe 4. Thank you guys so much. All right, let's start with the dumbass songs. Oh, before the people that leave, I'll be doing the extravaganza tomorrow on the Crucible's Rumble channel. That's 5:30. And then at 10 p.m., I'll be doing my show again. So, all right. I could say, goal. That's all I got. I'm all congested up. All right, let's do it. Let's put ourselves out of our misery here. Oh, Rumble, someone's going to have to donate like $500 to catch you up. Country. Okay. Oh, look at this. The incredible Pix Paradox. Thank you so much, man. $100. What a legend. By the way, it was an absolute pleasure to meet Pix and a ton of other people down there at that debate. So for those that didn't go, I hope it came. I should have mentioned this. I hope that it was obvious that I was trying to have a good time. I was having fun doing that debate in person. I was trying to hype up the audience. So I hope that all of that came across. And I think the people there enjoyed themselves. I even had lefties that didn't agree with me that said that they enjoyed themselves there. So, but all right. 906. This is number 1. All right. Country. I think I have that one saved here.
Where there's a whip,
Oh, I gotta turn it up.
there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the land says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a whip. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where right, left, where there's a whip. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Left, right, whip, 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 whip. Got the crack on the back, says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war.
Hey! Oh, snap. Look at this. Daniel Graves, absolute legend. Thank you so much, man. Gives $100. Says, can we please finally get one leftist that'll actually debate and not chase their own tails circularly? I would genuinely enjoy seeing a back and forth debate and see them make some intelligent points, but it doesn't seem likely. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Lonerbox is probably one of the better ones, and the standard's very low, if I'm completely honest. I mean, if you look at the average person that I'm debating recently, it's like, phew. So, you know, the mods kick you out for asking for a song. I don't know about that. Shit. All right. Well, thank you so much, though, Daniel Graves. Yeah, it is frustrating, though. I wish there were better debates to be had. All right. Now I owe a total of 8. I'm sorry, 8. And I've played 1. All right. So I have 7 more. Oh. Rumble, you guys are like $600 behind. Ugh. All right. Music. Lullaby. You just know YouTube's going to rub it in if they win tonight. Sucks.
there's a will, there's a way.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Oh, I hate this. All right. It's interesting. The Al Saeed thing, they had him up 98% chance to win. Polymarket said they had him up. Polling average was like 16%. He was ahead, or 16 points he was ahead. And now it looks like it's going to be within one point. So once more shows just how shit the polling was. But we were told it was a done deal going into today.
There's a whip, there's a whip, there's a whip, there's a way, where's a whip, but other way, we don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says, nay, 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 we're going to march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a whip, where there's a whip, there's a way, where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a whip, where there's a whip, there's a way, where there's a whip, there's a way. Left. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. There's a whip, there's a whip, there's a whip, there's a whip. White, love a do white, love a da ba da 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 ba da ba da ba da ba do ba ba da ba do ba. Do 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 da do ba da ba do ba da ba da ba do ba ba da ba do ba ba da ba da ba da ba da ba da do ba do ba do ba do ba right. The corner back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the dark lords. War. Where there's a way, there's a way. Where there's a way, there's a way. Where there left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. There's a whip, there's a whip, there's a whip, there's a whip, there's a way.
Yes, that the little thing at the end there always gets me. You know, it's really good for having a cold. Whip songs. It's fucking excellent. Oh, Congolese. Yeah, okay.
There's a way, where there's a weep, there's a way. People up, they're never know. Yo compte n'a qu'à ma force à la chérie. Cherche mon job. J'avoue quand ça s'en gros bas, ça me l'est right now. Where there's a whip, there's a way. There's a whip, where there's a whip, there's a way. There's a whip, we don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day, all day, all day. Where there's a wee better way, where there's a wee better ride. Boy, l'audience a denk, yo pendant de la nimbe, raté nos kina, manque de moment, sine ne qui sat, young pop. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. There's a way. Right, yes. Where there's a whip, I'm trying to the verses are ready to take it. Where there's a whip, come back on the way 'cause I'm ready to fight it. Where there's a whip, for we are the slaves of the dark lords war.
All right. Woo. Built right over on Rumble. $5 says a 5 ski for the grift. Keep up the good work. Rob, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay.
Well, there's a whip, there's a way. Well, there's a whip, there's a way. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the land says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Well, there's a whip, well, there's a whip, there's a way. Well, there's a whip, there's a way, left, right, left. There's a way, left, right, left. There's a way, left, right. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more, for we are the slaves of the dark lords. Whoa.
Yeah, yeah. We did it. Amazing. Okay. Huh. Three more of these dumb shits. Rumble, you're running out of time to win the trifecta. I was cheering for it just because I always like to see me getting support on Rumble because I'm always waiting for YouTube to just outright ban me or demonetize me. So I was actually cheering for Rumble to win the Dono battle 3 days in a row. I was cheering for it. But I don't think it's going to happen. The hat trick, not possible. Look, all the whip songs suck, but that one sucks less than some of the other ones, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. What do I know? You know? I don't know. I don't know much. Oh, wow. I haven't heard this one in a while. Always a fan favorite. Enjoy.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a way, there's a way. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, where there's a will, where there's a way, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a will. Where there's a way, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a whip. Left, right, left. Where there's a whip, there's a whip. Left, right, A crack on the back says we're gonna fight, we're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war.
Now, we have one song left. Just one. We're 25% of the way to 200% of the goal, which would make up for our failure yesterday. Rumble, I don't know what to tell you. I think you're going to have to eat the L tonight, unless someone's going to come in and donate $600. I don't see it happening. Oh, bully dog, $10 over on Rumble. Thank you. Says here's something. Oh, and Mangozi, $10 says I still can't tell if I ate Peruvian space lobster or how much it's tolerable. I don't know. I don't think I would find myself listening to that style of music if it wasn't that I had to for this 25. Rumble's $55 away from a whip on their end. All right, here we go. Last one. Oh. No free Disney, no. Oh, fuck me. What a load of shit. Fuck. What horrible timing. That's so fucking shitty.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's
I made it back. Right here. I made it for you, Rob.
where there's a
run down the stairs. Left, right, left, right, left. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. Smile with me, Rob. You know how to end it, right, Rob? Give him a little spirit fingers. Rob, give him a little spirit fingers.
What a mess. All right. Well, that's it. You happy? You happy with that shit? Rumble, it's $55 for them for a whip song. YouTube, it's what, 75 away. And meanwhile, I feel like I have to sneeze. And I had to fucking play that shitty ass Disney song of chance. Of just the chance of it hitting. So shitty. Crazy. Rumble gets no discount. No. What are the odds? Well, assuming the wheel is fairly balanced, the odds are 1 in 117 is what the chance of any specific song coming up is. There are 117 different songs on there, so yeah, at least I got my favorite songs. What a piece of shit. All right. Well, if no one else is gonna donate tonight, I could pleasantly go take some Alka-Seltzer. Oh, wait, Glicks got 50 on Rumble. If someone donates another 5, that would be 1. Oh, Abby, $50. This is the last one. Thank you. It takes us $25 away. Thank you so much. Mengozi, $20. Over on Rumble says, this was probably yours. Thank you. Still no, that doesn't reach the goal on either end. But close. Now, I have the Alka-Seltzer like cold and flu. It's not just for your stomach. I hope not. It says cold and flu. I prefer it. Also, I should take some Zyrtec or something. So we are $35 away on Rumble and $25 away. Can we give it up for Rumble? They lost with dignity tonight. They almost had the trifecta. They were crushing it 2 nights in a row. They couldn't surmount YouTube's incredible generosity tonight. But it was a strong effort. They fall like $600 short. Tough actin, triactin. I don't know triactin. I remember Tenactin, the old Brian Dennehy commercial. Yeah, Tenactin's different. Oh, wait. Gives 20. Now we're $5 away. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, Glicks. $50 over on Rumble. Says, I can't do 15, but here's 50. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. Oh, and Dartho gives 10. Unbelievable. That's two more. One on Rumble and one on YouTube. Well done. Oh, Mangozi gives another 10. Over on Rumble says, congratulations to the choice word people on YouTube. Oh, man. And then Pix Paradox matches it with 10 and says, let's go. Whew. Big Daddy Pod, $5 says, Rob, in the nice of your doctor. You're feeling so bad because you're fat. Every ailment you and I have is because we're fat. Fuck them. Yeah. It's going to be a cold winter. I'll keep my fat, thank you. All right. I owe two more. All right, let's do it. You almost got me, Mangoz. I almost slipped up and just read. Andrew's got an app when I was using his computer where the super chats all show up in one. So Rumble and YouTube. And he kept telling me, he's like, dude, don't just read the super chat. You got to fucking read it ahead of time because you're going to end up using some slurs. I was like, oh, shit. All right, doo-wop. Man, I don't really remember this one. Doo-wop.
Where there's a way, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a whip. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, where there's a way. Left, right, left, right, left. Left, right, left, right, left, left. Where there's a whip. Left, right, left, right, left. Left, right, left. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night. And more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war. Where there's a shoot whip, shoot it, shoot, shoot whip, shoot it.
I'm trying.
Shoot whip, shoot it, shoot, shoot whip, shoot.
All right. Doo-wop. I don't remember that one. This one doesn't count.
Where there's a whip, there's a whip. Where there's a whip, there's a whip. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. 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 Left, right, left, right. Where there's a way. A cricket lecture, statement of mind, we won't through day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war.
Oh, gotta love the freebies. Ugh. Dubstep. Okay.
Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's
Oh, man. That's it. That's it. We did it. We made it through the night. I think we're $80 away on both Rumble or YouTube for another one. So I think we're safe. I think people are tapped out. Dubstep was big in 09. I don't know. I saw a list someone put on X. It was like the top 10 songs that might win a Grammy or an Emmy or whatever the fuck it is they win. I didn't know one of them from this year. Not one. It all sounds like the same bullshit, too. I'm just becoming an old man. Everything new sucks. Not like the glory days of 2009 dubstep, you know? I know why I'm fucking... Yeah, I get it, Caleb. We know why I'm sick. You know why I'm sick?
Jews.
Now I'm good? Now I'm speaking the truth? You know what we haven't done in a while? I just have to ask. Every once in a while, I need to go to an authority and say, is it okay to wear blackface?
Anyways, next question. Is blackface or brownface ever okay?
Only if you're a pretty kitty.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we can all agree. It's only okay if you're a pretty kitty. We all agree, right? Only if you're a pretty kitty. Oh my gosh. I would just delete the internet, my presence off the internet, if I ever did something like that. You know? I've done embarrassing shit. They made me sing the Whip song the other day. I guess we'll have to put it in the bylaws for $500 donation. A one-time $500. I'll sing the original Whip song. I have to put it in the bylaws. Well, folks, is that it for tonight? It's been a fun night. I enjoyed. I think we're going to raid Speakeasy. He's on. Cool Vic's on if you prefer that. But I raided him last night, so I'll switch it up and raid Speakeasy. Shit, that reminds me. I got to call Speakeasy. We are also, one thing you could do for me, if you happen to be watching, if you go to YouTube right now and sub to me, I'm very close to 25,000. Very close. Cool Vic's at 24,000 and change. He's going to make it to 25 before me. That fucker. Nah, I like Cool Vic. I'm just... But we are, let's see where I'm at. I have, I'm 24,828. So I'm what? 172 subs away. Yes, I'm still sick. I'll get over it. You don't think Sarah will make it before me? I don't know. Did I miss any donos? I don't think so. All right. Well, it's been fun. So thank you to my editor, Black Elk. Thank you to Avarice. Thank you to all of my wonderful mods. Everyone who donated tonight, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's true. Everyone who watched, liked, subscribed, chatted, all of you I appreciate. I really do. Thank you so much. Like I said, I got some more in real life debates lined up. Can't wait to do. Think it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, I'll be fine. It's just a cold. I'll be all right. So, take a a moment tonight. We talked about fascism. The debate was about fascism. Never forget the bullets that were destined to kill Charlie Kirk. One of them said, "Catch this fascist." How the left assassinated him, cheered on his murder. Never forget that that's what the stakes are. That's why it's so important to get involved in the cultural and political processes. So if you can, say a prayer for Charlie and his family. And don't leave that memory go away. So, all right, I will see you all tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on the Crucible's Rumble channel for the extravaganza, and then right back here, everywhere you're watching, 10 p.m. tomorrow night. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow. As always, have a good one.
Only in America is it possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk. Take that leap of faith. Stay involved. Trust God and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse. That God will use all things, for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.